They started laughing. Because our boy told them the apocalypse is tomorrow. Then everything actually happens. Now everyone is shitting their pants and running everywhere. Our boy was ready for this and dips to his penthouse with supplies with his friends. But how did he know? He got a ring, and that ring has an OP system, while everyone has to depend on this brat just for some breadcrumbs. Our guy is just chilling in his penthouse with unlimited supplies. His system is so OP he gets guns and food for just doing nothing. This brat is currently hoarding all the supplies like he bought everything. When our boy's friends have had enough, they decide to head to our boy's place. But now he gets left behind and his waifu tells everyone to wait for our boy. She gave him a kiss 1 minute ago and now everyone tells her it was her last. Meanwhile, our MC is dying after walking and fighting zombies the whole day. He wakes up to a new waifu ready to do cardio again. Then now he loses her the next day after he just lost one the day before. Our boy had enough, so he decides to get drunk and enters the wrong room. Luckily, it ended into a cardio session for him. So how did our boy end up losing all his waifus? And how did he find that strange ring? Zhao Tianlei is dragged into the woods and beaten because Lin Mu's crew believes he tried pursuing Shen Xinyu. Lin Mu finally stops the beating, not out of mercy, but because he wants Zhao awake for the warning. As a wealthy campus bully with powerful connections, Lin Mu tells Zhao he will overlook this insult only once. He drives one last kick into Zhao's chest to make sure the message is impossible to misunderstand. Lin Mu promises that another attempt to approach Shen Xinyu will cost Zhao one of his legs. The gang walks away satisfied, leaving Zhao alone in the grass with no strength to argue back. As an orphan paying his own tuition, Zhao worries less about revenge than losing wages if he reaches work late. While forcing himself up, he accidentally steps beside a strange ring that suddenly begins glowing. The ring's burst of light catches Zhao off guard and sends him crashing back into the bushes. Already bruised and late for work, Zhao decides this may be the worst day of his life. A voice inside his head announces that Host Zero has been activated and prepares to scan his body. The ring identifies itself as Virtual God and explains that it can communicate directly through the strange device. It claims Virtual God selected him, assigns the codename Zero, and warns that the outbreak begins in 16 hours. Zhao assumes this is some ridiculous sales pitch where the ring names him a savior before demanding money. The voice promises proof if he wears the ring, while Zhao makes it clear he is not buying anything. His suspicious stare gives this talking ring exactly one chance to stop sounding like a scam call. Curiosity eventually beats common sense, and Zhao slides the mysterious ring onto his finger. The device immediately locks onto him and begins scanning every part of its new host. Once the scan finishes, Virtual God establishes a complete connection with Zhao's mind and body. The ring floods his consciousness with information his brain was never prepared to receive. Zhao is forced to witness a future where cities burn and infected people swarm through the streets. The vision shows ordinary survivors being overwhelmed before they can even understand what attacked them. Every escape route collapses as terrified people are hunted throughout the ruined city. The infected keep advancing without fear or reason, turning the warning into something far too real. The vision finally releases Zhao, but those implanted memories feel more real than any nightmare. Virtual God explains that it stored knowledge of the coming apocalypse directly inside Zhao's memory. Zhao refuses to believe zombies will appear tomorrow, although his new memories are already arguing against him. He tries ripping the ring off, only to receive a painful warning that it has permanently bonded with its host. Zhao finally stops fighting the ring and admits that he has never even killed a chicken before. Virtual God explains that Zhao can move objects into a private storage space by focusing through the ring. Following its command, Zhao concentrates on the device and activates the storage function for the first time. A vast private space appears, complete with an exchange system stocked with resources and combat equipment. Defeating infected creatures will earn experience and crystal cores, which Zhao can exchange for supplies and stronger gear. The system also reveals evolution fluid that strengthens an infected body, but using it beforehand would cause infection instead. Zhao immediately notices the awful catch, since the fluid only becomes useful after the zombie virus begins infecting him. Virtual God confirms the rules and announces it will enter sleep mode soon, leaving Zhao with several unanswered questions. With only 16 hours left, Zhao stops arguing and races back to prepare before the outbreak begins. He returns to the dorm carrying a bag packed so heavily that it nearly swallows his entire back. His closest roommate notices the panic immediately, but Zhao has no time to invent a believable excuse. Zhao tells him the truth outright. Tomorrow zombies will spread across the world, and the dorm must become their shelter. He unloads food and water, planning to survive the first wave inside before searching for a safe route out. The other roommates exchange the exact look people make when a normal afternoon becomes an apocalypse briefing. Zhao remains completely serious, which somehow makes the warning sound even crazier to everyone else. Two roommates burst out laughing because they think his survival speech came directly from another zombie game. They roast him for playing too many disaster games and decide only a lunatic would believe the world ends tomorrow. Ignoring Zhao's warning, the pair leave for an internet cafe because even fresh air sounds better than his apocalypse talk. The door closes behind them, ending Zhao's last chance to keep everyone safely inside. His green-haired roommate stays behind and asks what could possibly make Zhao believe something this absurd. Zhao cannot prove it without wasting precious time, so he asks his friend to trust him just once. Together they pile desks and chairs against the entrance, turning the dorm into a messy but usable barricade. The roommate helps without understanding, while Zhao keeps reinforcing every gap before the deadline arrives. Hours of moving furniture leave his friend exhausted enough to fall asleep while sitting upright. Zhao refuses to relax because the countdown is nearly over and 1 week entrance could ruin everything. His roommate finally gives up and says he needs sleep, but Zhao remains fixed on the approaching deadline. As the other boy turns away, Zhao senses the system reacting and realizes the waiting period is ended. Morning appears normal, so his roommate starts complaining that Zhao tricked him over an apocalypse that never came. Before Zhao can answer, the ring alerts him that the infected are finally approaching. A scream erupts beyond the barricaded door, instantly wiping the doubt from his roommate's face. Zhao recognizes the sound from his implanted memories and knows the apocalypse has officially begun. The barricade starts buckling as something outside repeatedly crashes against the dormitory door. Zhao Tianlei and Wu Bin jolt upright, realizing the sounds outside are much worse than ordinary campus chaos. Wu Bin finally understands that Zhao's warning was real, and panic hits him all at once. Looking through the window confirms that the entire campus has already descended into disaster. Students are running in every direction while the newly infected stagger after anyone still moving. Wu Bin backs away in horror because people who were normal minutes ago are now attacking their classmates. Zhao forces him to calm down and explains that the first outbreak is at its most dangerous right now. Even after hearing that the infected are still slow, Wu Bin can barely process the idea of surviving this. Zhao admits they cannot protect everyone, especially when they still know almost nothing about conditions outside. Because the outbreak began during morning self-study, Zhao assumes most students should have barricaded themselves inside classrooms. Wu Bin suddenly remembers that Shen Xinyu scheduled a movie shoot on the playground that morning. Bad weather kept her on campus, and half the school gathered to watch what became the worst possible fan event. Zhao realizes the playground may be packed with classmates, including people who have always treated him well. He grabs a metal chair leg and decides that hiding safely while everyone dies is not something he can accept. Wu Bin remembers a fire axe stored beside the communications room on the first floor. Zhao decides that proper equipment would give them a far better chance than fighting with broken furniture. He tells Wu Bin to brace the door after he leaves and promises to return if he survives the trip downstairs. Wu Bin stares at him in disbelief, knowing Zhao was preparing to walk into the outbreak alone. Zhao reaches the entrance and prepares to move before his courage has time to reconsider. Wu Bin stops him and declares that he is coming too, whether Zhao approves or not. He owes Zhao for keeping him alive, and now he refuses to let his friend carry everything alone. Zhao accepts the help, quietly realizing that at least one person on campus genuinely has his back. They enter the silent corridor together, moving carefully toward the stairwell. A lone infected student wanders into view and blocks the route downstairs. The creature notices them and immediately turns toward the first living targets it can reach. Zhao closes the distance and knocks it backward before it can grab either of them. The infected student crashes onto the floor, giving them a brief opening. Zhao orders Wu Bin to run because stopping for every enemy would trap them inside the building. They race down the stairs and Zhao smashes open the fire cabinet without wasting another second. With the fire axe secured, the pair finally have something sturdier than repurposed dorm furniture. They burst through the ground floor exit and sprint toward the open campus. The sight beyond the doorway stops them cold before they can take another step. The courtyard is already overrun, with infected students spread across every route toward the playground. Wu Bin struggles to breathe as he realizes how quickly the outbreak consumed the school. Zhao refuses to freeze because the people trapped outside do not have time for them to panic. A large group of students remains stranded on the raised playground stage, surrounded on every side. The crowd is packed so tightly that one wrong movement could send people falling straight into the infected below. Wu Bin spots class monitor Ye Xitong among the survivors, but neither of them can locate Shen Xinyu. Zhao notices a production van parked near the playground and immediately forms a desperate plan. He will use the vehicle to draw the infected away, while Wu Bin gets the trapped students off the stage. Wu Bin refuses because Zhao would be risking his life against an entire crowd by himself. Zhao reminds him that yesterday's impossible warning has already proven accurate, so trusting him now is the safer bet. Before leaving, Zhao asks Wu Bin to find Shen Xinyu and protect her if he does not make it back. He runs toward the abandoned van before Wu Bin can argue any further. The key is still inside, giving Zhao the one lucky break he has received since the outbreak began. He pushes the vehicle forward and commits completely to the distraction. The van surges across the courtyard while Zhao fights to keep control. The noise pulls the infected away from the stage exactly as he hoped. Zhao swings the van across their path and keeps the entire crowd focused on him. The vehicle tears through the congested courtyard and opens a narrow escape route for the trapped students. Wu Bin orders everyone to climb down immediately instead of standing there waiting for a second miracle. The survivors rush from the stage while the infected remain distracted by Zhao's van. Yi Sitong thanks Wu Bin, but he quickly explains that Zhao is the person who actually saved them. Learning that Zhao drove away with the entire crowd behind him leaves Ye genuinely worried for his life. She tries to follow him, but Wu Bin stops her because rescuing everyone would be pointless if she leads them back into danger. Wu Bin sends Yi and the other students toward the library, then promises to go support Zhao himself. Yi warns him to be careful as he runs back toward the courtyard. By then the van is surrounded, forcing Zhao to abandon it before the infected completely close in. One infected student spots him near the trees and begins closing the distance. Zhao slips behind a trunk and tries to catch his breath without revealing his position. For a moment he finally gets enough space to steady himself and listen for movement. A hand suddenly reaches toward him from the shadows, giving him no time to identify who it belongs to. Zhao raises the axe on instinct and prepares to defend himself. He stops at the last second when the supposed attacker turns out to be Wu Bin. Zhao is stunned that Wu Bin came back instead of escaping with everyone else. Wu Bin drops to the ground and complains that rescuing reckless friends was supposed to be Zhao's job. He confirms that Yi led the surviving students into the library before he returned. Wu Bin calls Zhao their hero because nobody on that stage would have escaped without his plan. Zhao rejects the title and says he simply could not leave an entire group of classmates to die. Once they calm down, his first question is whether Wu Bin saw Shen Xinyu. Wu Bin admits the stage was too crowded and chaotic for him to search for one person. Zhao reassures himself that Shan has bodyguards nearby and probably found another safe route. He decides the library is still their best destination because it is enclosed and other survivors will naturally gather there. With no better option available, they head out to reunite with Yi and the others. The library stands nearby, but the open courtyard between them and the entrance remains dangerously exposed. Zhao and Wu Bin weave through the scattered infected while conserving enough energy to keep running. Zhao nearly loses his footing at the entrance, but he recovers before the delay becomes fatal. The nearby infected notice the movement and turn toward the library steps. The pair sprint for the doors with the growing crowd close behind them. Zhao pounds on the locked entrance and calls for the students inside to let them through. Someone behind the door accuses them of attracting the infected and refuses to unlock it. Wu Bin identifies both of them and warns that the crowd outside is getting closer every second. Ye Sitong recognizes their voices and demands that the others open the door immediately. Qianhao grabs her arm and decides that keeping himself safe matters more than the two people who saved everyone. Ye argues that abandoning Zhao and Wu Bin would be unforgivable after they risked everything for the class. The infected reach the stairs while the students continue wasting precious time arguing behind the glass. Yu pushes Qianhao aside and tries to reach the lock herself. Qianhao strikes her to stop the door from being opened. Several classmates protest that he has gone too far, but nobody immediately steps forward to challenge him. Qianhao points outside and insists that opening the door would bring the entire crowd in with them. Fear leaves the surrounding students silent even though they know Yi is right about who saved them. Yu looks around and realizes that panic has turned a room full of classmates into passive spectators. She calls Qianhao out for attacking her and leaving their rescuers outside. He tells her to stop acting like the class monitor and says she can die alone if she cares that much. Wu Bin hears the confrontation through the door and becomes furious that Qianhao attacked Yi. Zhao knocks back an approaching infected student and tells Wu Bin that arguing is useless because they need another escape route now. Wu Bin follows him away from the entrance and desperately asks where they can possibly go. Zhao takes control of the situation again and orders Wu Bin to follow him. Wu Bin apologizes as they circle the library, believing his reckless return only made Zhao's situation worse. He blames himself for getting caught outside and forcing Zhao to abandon the safety of the entrance. Zhao tells him to stop because Qianhao would have refused them entry even without infected students chasing them. Qianhao has always resented his classmates, and the collapse of order finally gave that bitterness room to control everyone. Wu Bin looks back uneasily because Zhao sounds almost sympathetic toward the person who abandoned them. Having spent years being bullied himself, Zhao understands how humiliation can twist someone without excusing what Qianhao did. Understanding ends there because Zhao still intends to return the 2 strikes Qianhao gave their class monitor. Wu Bin points out the obvious problem that the entire library has locked them outside. Zhao remembers the building has a rear entrance and leads him around before the infected notice them again. The pair move quietly along the wall and reach the back of the library unnoticed. Zhao tests the rear handle and finds that this entrance was never properly secured. He steps inside with Wu Bin behind him, finally entering the shelter everyone at the front refused to open. That easy entrance leaves Zhao wearing the expression of someone who just discovered the building's worst-kept secret. The first floor is crowded with frightened survivors who have already divided into small suspicious groups. One classmate checks Yi Sitong's bruised face, but Yi quietly insists that the pain has already faded. Her friend condemns Qian Hao for attacking Yi after Zhao and Wu Bin had risked themselves to save everyone. What hurts Yi more is knowing the surrounding students could have stopped him if even a few had spoken together. Qian Hao overhears them and mocks her for pretending to be righteous after failing to drive the infected away herself. Another student demands that he apologize for striking the person who had always looked after their class. Qian Hao refuses and warns Ye that her old position means nothing now that the teachers can no longer protect her. Yi finally loses patience with his arrogance and prepares to challenge him again. Before the argument goes further, someone calls Qian Hao's name from behind the crowd. Zhao announces his return by knocking Qian Hao away before the bully can properly turn around. Qian Hao crashes to the floor as Zhao walks straight past the stunned survivors. Seeing Zhao inside leaves him more confused than angry because he believed the front entrance was their only route. Wu Bin grabs Qian Hao and demands to know how he could abandon the same classmates who saved his life. Cornered by the accusation, Qian Hao insists that he only acted to protect everyone already inside. He argues that opening the door with infected students close behind would have placed the entire library in danger. Zhao admits the reasoning itself is not completely wrong, which briefly catches Wu Bin off guard. Several students use that opening to end the argument and claim escaping campus matters more than assigning blame. Wu Bin refuses to let Qian Hao hide behind the crowd after using their fear to protect himself. With several frightened students supporting his excuse, Qian Hao regains enough confidence to start smirking again. Yi's anger disappears the moment she sees Zhao alive and safely standing among the survivors. She thanks Zhao and Wu Bin for saving everyone on the playground despite receiving nothing but betrayal afterward. Relief and embarrassment mix across Yi's face as she realizes how deeply Zhao's return affects her. Zhao notices the mark Qian Hao left on her face and silently remembers the promise he made outside. He turns away from Yi and walks directly toward Qian Hao without offering any explanation. Qian Hao sees Zhao raise his hand, but understands what is happening 1 second too late. The first slap lands cleanly and erases the smug expression from Qian Hao's face. Qian Hao clutches his cheek and demands to know how Zhao suddenly became bold enough to touch him. Zhao answers with the second slap he promised, making the punishment perfectly even. Holding the fire axe at his side, Zhao warns Qian Hao never to bully Yi or the other students again. Qian Hao finally realizes that the timid student he once dismissed has changed since the outbreak began. With the matter settled, Zhao takes Yi's hand and leads her away from the growing crowd. Yi freezes when their hands meet because this is far more direct than anything she expected from him. Her face turns bright red, while Zhao remains completely focused on finding somewhere quieter to talk. Qian Hao calls after them, but his swollen pride no longer carries enough authority to stop anyone. Zhao, Wu Bin and Yi sit near the wall where they can finally speak without the entire library listening. Zhao keeps the axe close while resting, knowing that locked doors do not make this building permanently safe. Yi struggles to regain her composure after being protected and publicly led away by the Han. Wu Bin asks whether her face still hurts, and Yi hurriedly claims she cannot feel it anymore. She apologizes for failing to open the entrance after Zhao and Wu Bin had saved everyone on the playground. Wu Bin tells her the blame belongs to Qian Hao and the classmates, who allowed fear to make their decision. Yu still believes she failed her responsibility and no longer deserves to be treated as their class monitor. Zhao rejects that immediately because in his mind, she remains the person who always tried to protect their class. The reassurance breaks through the emotional control Yi has been forcing herself to maintain. Unable to hold everything back any longer, she leans against Zhao and begins crying. Zhao looks completely unprepared for the situation, but he refuses to pull away while she needs support. Yu admits she is terrified because nobody knows who will survive or when the infected might reach them. Zhao promises that as long as he remains alive, he will do everything possible to keep her safe. Once her breathing settles, Yi thanks Tianlei with a sincerity that goes far beyond ordinary politeness. She asks him to stop calling her class monitor and says he can simply call her Sitong from now on. Zhao agrees before immediately asking whether she saw Shen Xinyu enter the library. Sitong feels an unexpected sting of jealousy, although she knows his concern for others is part of why she trusts him. She saw Shen and her assistant escape from the playground together, but the crowd separated them after entering the library. Sitong then asked to borrow a phone because every attempt to contact her parents has failed. Zhao explains that the outbreak is worldwide, communications have collapsed and everyone's families are facing the same crisis. The possibility that her parents are trapped among the infected leaves Sitong struggling to breathe. Zhao reminds her that surviving now is the only way she can ever have a chance of finding them again. Elsewhere in the hall, hunger and uncertainty leave another exhausted student sitting silently apart from everyone. Xiao Hao and several classmates admit they are starving after spending hours trapped inside without supplies. Their complaints irritate nearby students who accuse them of caring more about food than the danger outside. Xiao Hao argues that nobody is asking those students to feed him, so his hunger is none of their concern. The disagreement quickly attracts a crowd and turns another simple problem into a shouting match. Sitong tries to calm everyone by reminding them that survival requires cooperation rather than constant fighting. Zhao stops her before she steps into the center of another argument that could easily turn against her. He reminds Sitong that reasoning failed with Kan Hao and warns that these frightened students may react the same way. The two groups continue blaming each other while neither side offers an actual solution to the shortage. Sitong can only stand back and watch the survivors divide themselves over the little food remaining. Scattered books and empty containers confirm that the library's accessible supplies have already been searched. One student checks the water dispenser and discovers that even the final container has been drained. A blue-haired classmate remembers the curator's office upstairs and suggests it may contain food or bottled water. With hunger overpowering caution, a small group agrees to search the second floor together. Their path is abruptly blocked by a metal pole swung across the staircase from above. Several armed students appear on the steps and order the group to stop before going any farther. Inside the upstairs office, Lin Mu calmly asks why anyone has entered the area he claimed for himself. Wu Bin recognizes Lin Mu immediately and wonders how Zhao's longtime bully also ended up inside the library. Zhao's expression hardens because yesterday's beating is still fresh in his memory. The others warn that Lin Mu has several loyal followers, while Xiao Hao suggests leaving before the confrontation worsens. Lin Mu watches the nervous group in silence and clearly enjoys how quickly his reputation frightens them. Xiao Hao explains that the first floor has no food left and they only came upstairs searching for something to eat. Lin Mu closes his book with deliberate calm as though their hunger is merely an interruption. Without another warning, he knocks Xiao Hao backward and sends him falling down the steps. The blue-haired student screams Xiao Hao's name while the surrounding classmates recoil in shock. Lin Mu looks down at them without remorse, making it clear that nobody will take anything from his floor without permission. Xiao Hao tumbles down the staircase after Lin Mu kicks him away from the second floor. A blue-haired classmate rushes over and checks whether Xiao Hao was seriously hurt by the fall. Lin Mu watches from above with complete satisfaction because fear is exactly the reaction he wanted. He walks downstairs mocking the survivors for behaving as though the old campus rules still matter. Lin Mu declares the staircase his boundary and claims every room above it for himself and his followers. The surrounding students fall silent when he promises severe punishment for anyone who crosses that line. Anyone wanting food must now surrender valuables to Lin Mu, who has turned basic supplies into his private business. His smug expression makes it clear that starvation is not a problem to him, but another source of power. Wu Bin condemns Lin Mu for occupying the upper floor and taking food that should belong to everyone. Lin Mu ignores him and offers the blue-haired student food as she abandons Xiao Hao and joins his group. Disgusted by the offer, she knocks his hand away and refuses to let hunger buy her loyalty. The food drops to the floor, wasting something the other survivors would have gladly shared. Lin Mu's amusement disappears because public rejection threatens the authority he is trying to establish. He strikes the student for embarrassing him in front of the entire library. She reels from the hit while the surrounding classmates remain too frightened to intervene. Lin Mu grabs her by the hair and demands respect from someone he already attacked without reason. Yu Sitong steps forward and orders him to release their classmate immediately. With the campus collapsing outside, Sitong argues that cooperation is their only realistic chance of surviving. Several students finally support her and remind Lin Mu that the library's remaining supplies belong to everyone. Lin Mu answers that teachers and rules no longer exist, so Sitong has nobody left to enforce her authority. He threatens to humiliate Sitong publicly and prove that her former position offers no protection now. Lin Mu's followers move toward her while he enjoys forcing the entire room to watch. Sitong realizes he is willing to cross any boundary as long as fear keeps everyone obedient. Before his followers reach her, Zhao's fire axe cuts through the room and stops them in their tracks. Zhao steps between Sitong and Lin Mu with the axe ready, making it clear that the harassment ends here. Lin Mu stares at him in disbelief because yesterday's helpless target is now openly challenging him. One follower laughs at Zhao's attempt to intervene and assumes he can still be intimidated easily. Lin mocks Zhao for pretending to be a hero when he has spent years accepting every beating quietly. Zhao admits Lin Mu bullied him before, but the collapse of society does not give that cruelty permission to continue. Lin Mu tells him nothing has changed and confidently expects Zhao to retreat just as he always did. Instead, Zhao swings the axe past him and drives it into the nearby furniture with overwhelming force. The impact tears through the obstacle and silences every person inside the library. Zhao warns that the next attack will not be aimed beside anyone who threatens his friends. Lin Mu finally hesitates as he realizes Zhao is no longer frightened of him or his followers. Even the men behind Lin Mu begin backing down after seeing how easily the axe split through solid material. Lin Mu accepts a temporary division where his group controls the second floor and Zhao's group remains below. He still warns that anyone caught stealing upstairs will be punished without mercy. Zhao lets him withdraw because starting a larger fight would only place the other survivors in danger. Lin Mu walks away while quietly planning how to strengthen his control over the upper floor. He orders his followers to barricade the staircase and attack anyone who attempts to pass them. Lin Mu also sends several men searching for stronger weapons before Zhao can gain another advantage. Once the confrontation ends, Wu Bin checks Si Tong and asks whether Lin Mu frightened or injured her. Si Tong insists she is fine, although the encounter showed her how quickly an ordinary classmate can become cruel. Zhao explains that peaceful society hides many people's worst instincts beneath rules and consequences. Once death removes those limits, some survivors will sacrifice everyone around them just to protect themselves. He warns Si Tong that constantly defending strangers will eventually cost her life unless she learns when to step back. Wu Bin promises that he and Zhao will protect her even if her habit of helping everyone never changes. Their larger problem is that Lin Mu now possesses nearly all the library's food and drinking water. Anyone remaining on the first floor will eventually starve even if the infected never enter the building. Zhao advises against confronting Lin Mu again until they have enough strength and supplies to survive without him. Wu Bin and Si Tong exchange confused looks because Zhao sounds far calmer than their situation deserves. Si Tong's stomach answers for her, leaving her embarrassed after trying to pretend she was not hungry. She nervously denies the sound while Wu Bin struggles not to make the moment even more awkward. Zhao casually admits he is hungry too and announces that the three of them should go eat. Both companions stare at him because Lin Mu just claimed every visible source of food in the library. The other survivors watch the trio leave and wonder whether Zhao has secretly discovered another supply. Elsewhere, Shen Xinyu sits quietly beside her assistant while listening to the commotion spread through the building. Her assistant notices her distraction and asks what has been troubling her since the playground escape. Jinyu claims nothing is wrong, but her expression shows that Zhao's actions have remained on her mind. Zhao leads Wu Bin and Si Tong through an empty corridor away from Lin Mu's occupied territory. Wu Bin asks where food could possibly be hidden after everyone already searched the first floor. Zhao plans to reach the campus canteen and tells both of them to remain behind and guard the door. Wu Bin and Si Tong immediately reject the idea of letting him enter the infected campus alone. Si Tong insists she can tolerate the hunger because no meal is worth Zhao risking his life again. Zhao reassures them that he can move faster alone and promises to return safely. Before either friend can stop him, he slips through the exit and begins the supply run by himself. Wu Bin comforts Si Tong by reminding her how much stronger and more capable Zhao has become. Outside, the paths between the library and canteen are filled with infected students wandering without direction. Zhao stays low and moves between their blind spots rather than wasting energy on unnecessary fights. From behind a corner, he studies the open courtyard and searches for the safest route forward. Several abandoned backpacks lie beside students who never managed to escape the first wave. Zhao checks one bag and discovers that its owner packed food and drinks before the outbreak. More supplies are hidden beneath the books, giving him enough to feed his two companions for now. The discovery brings relief, but Zhao knows a few snacks will not solve their long-term problem. He activates the ring and opens his private storage space before anyone can approach. The dimensional container appears beside him and allows the supplies to be hidden completely from sight. Zhao begins transferring every useful item from the abandoned bags into storage. There is enough for one meal, but sharing with Wu Bin and Si Tong will empty the supply almost immediately. Since food will become harder to find each day, Zhao decides to gather as much as possible while the campus remains searchable. He separates the longer-lasting food and water so those emergency reserves will only be used when necessary. Kneeling beside the storage space, Zhao starts planning how to reach the canteen and return without attracting a crowd. He repacks several items into an ordinary backpack so his friends will not question where the supplies came from. A faint movement behind him suddenly interrupts his concentration. Zhao turns and realizes he became so focused on the supplies that he stopped watching his surroundings. An infected student has already closed the distance and now stands directly behind him. An infected student charges from Zhao's blind side before he can finish packing the supplies. Zhao jerks backward and narrowly avoids being grabbed. His hand closes around the fire axe before the infected student can attack again. One decisive swing stops the creature and clears the immediate threat. Zhao shoves it aside because remaining still will only attract more infected students. With the backpack secured, he begins running back toward the library. The route closes from both directions as two separate groups of infected students begin surrounding him. Zhao spots an elevated canteen window and realizes it may be his only available escape. He launches himself above the reaching hands and forces his way through the window. Zhao lands inside the canteen kitchen before the infected crowd can follow. The abandoned kitchen is completely empty, but the meals prepared before the outbreak remain untouched. He searches every cabinet and storage area for food that can survive the return trip. A rice cooker filled with prepared rice gives him exactly the container he needs. After hours of running, ordinary white rice suddenly looks better than anything a restaurant could offer. Back at the library's rear entrance, Sitong and Wu Bin continue waiting anxiously for Zhao. A careful knock finally breaks the silence and draws both of them toward the door. Wu Bin opens it and nearly celebrates when Zhao appears alive on the other side. Zhao slips inside and calmly announces his return. Sitong rushes forward and embraces him before remembering that Wu Bin is standing directly beside them. Zhao apologizes for worrying her and admits that the growing infected crowd made the journey much harder than expected. He quickly redirects everyone's attention toward the backpack full of supplies. The rice cooker surprises them even more because Zhao crossed the entire playground carrying a complete meal. Zhao tells both of them to stop staring and eat while the food is still warm. Hunger removes the last traces of table manners as they gather around the cooker with spoons. Sitong and Wu Bin agree that this messy rice tastes incredible after everything they survived. Zhao encourages them to eat more because he already sampled plenty inside the canteen. Sitong still notices that he is barely touching the meal and asks why he is holding back. Zhao assures her that he ate before leaving so he would have enough energy for the return journey. He distributes water and warns that every grain of food now matters because future supply runs will become much more dangerous. Letting the entire library discover their meal would make the three of them an immediate target. Sitong struggles with that decision because many frightened classmates nearby are also hungry. Wu Bin reminds her that kindness nearly got Zhao abandoned outside and asks her not to repeat the same mistake. The remaining food could not provide everyone with one proper bite, and sharing it would only leave the entire room hungry. Sitong reluctantly accepts that protecting their small supply is necessary for survival. Once the meal ends, Wu Bin suggests hiding the rice cooker before anyone notices the smell. Zhao already has a simple hiding place that nobody inside the library will willingly search. Sitong and Wu Bin watch nervously as he carries the cooker toward the exterior door. Zhao places it outside the secured passage where the other survivors are too frightened to investigate. He closes and locks the door before anyone inside notices what they stored beyond it. Wu Bin realizes the plan works because nobody hiding from infected students will volunteer to search outside for dinner. Zhao still warns that disappearing for too long could make the others suspicious. The trio returns to the main hall and finds the survivors growing increasingly restless. Empty stomachs have turned fear into irritation, and several students are already snapping at one another. One student points out that all their shouting is useless unless someone has an actual source of food. Lin Mu descends from the second floor and pretends he has arrived to solve everyone's problems. Wu Bin and Sitong immediately recognize that his sudden generosity is another attempt to control the room. Lin Mu's attention shifts when he notices that celebrity student Shen Xinyu is among the survivors. He offers Xinyu and Sister Hua food, water, and protection if they move upstairs with him. Wu Bin is surprised they missed Xinyu earlier, while Zhao quietly studies how she responds. Sitong notices Zhao's attention but keeps her thoughts to herself. Sister Hua admits that Xinyu has not eaten for hours and politely asks whether Lin Mu will share anything. Lin Mu promises Xinyu whatever she wants as long as she joins his group upstairs. One of his followers presents bread and water to make the offer appear generous. Lin Mu claims a famous woman like Xinyu cannot safely remain among ordinary students without his protection. Xinyu refuses because she would rather remain with everyone than purchase safety by obeying him. Lin Mu ignores the rejection and grabs her hand as though the decision already belongs to him. Sister Hua immediately tries to separate them and warns that he is hurting Xinyu. Zhao watches with growing anger but waits to see whether Xinyu can defend her own choice. Lin Mu insults Sister Hua and threatens her for interfering in his conversation. Xinyu forcefully pulls herself free before he can drag her anywhere. She slaps Lin Mu and makes her rejection impossible to misinterpret. Yunyu declares that a little food will never make her follow his orders or surrender her dignity. Lin Mu's follower quickly retrieves the supplies before anyone else can take them. Humiliated in public, Lin Mu insults Xinyu and promises she will eventually become hungry enough to beg him. He retreats upstairs with his followers and leaves both women without food. Sister Hua checks Xinyu and makes sure Lin Mu did not injure her. Xinyu admits that nobody can be trusted easily anymore and says they must depend on each other. Wu Bin wonders why Zhao remained silent while Lin Mu pressured the woman he had been searching for. Zhao explains that he wanted to learn who Xinyu truly was when fame and social status could no longer protect her. Sitong still asks why he did not step forward after risking so much to save Xinyu earlier. Zhao admits he would have lost respect for Xinyu if she accepted Lin Mu's deal, but her refusal changed his opinion completely. Si-tong teasingly suggests that comforting Xinyu now might give Zhao his best possible chance with her. Zhao dismisses the idea because Xinyu is a famous celebrity while he is a broke student carrying a fire axe. Wu Bin physically pushes him forward and declares that the apocalypse has finally removed his excuses. Approaching footsteps interrupt the argument before Zhao can escape the embarrassment. Xinyu and Sister Hua arrive in front of the trio. Zhao awkwardly asks whether Xinyu was hurt during the confrontation. Xinyu studies him silently, still unsure why he watched without interfering. Sister Hua steps between them and says Xinyu is exhausted and needs to rest. Zhao explains that he means no harm and only wants to give them something to eat and drink. The offer catches Sister Hua completely off guard after Lin Mu tried attaching conditions to the same basic supplies. Zhao hands the package directly to Xinyu without requesting anything in return. Xinyu's guarded expression softens as she realizes his intentions are genuine. Zhao clarifies that helping her does not mean he expects affection, loyalty, or any other payment. He places the food and water beside them before the situation can become more awkward. Zhao walks away and gives both women enough privacy to eat comfortably. Sister Hua urges Xinyu to accept the meal because refusing sincere help would accomplish nothing. The quiet corner finally allows Xinyu to eat without the surrounding survivors watching her. Upstairs, one of Lin Mu's followers reports that a student has arrived asking for a private meeting. The visitor turns out to be Qun Hao, who enters wearing his most cooperative smile. Lin Mu asks what Qun Hao wants after everything that happened downstairs. Qian Hao reminds him of their old friendship and begs for permission to join the protected second-floor group. He promises to follow every order and handle any unpleasant task Lin Mu gives him. Lin Mu responds that he already has plenty of followers and sees no reason to add another. Qian Hao quickly mentions Shen Xinyu's refusal and claims he knows how to change that outcome. He assures Lin Mu that the entire problem can be left in his hands. Qian Hao promises to deliver Xinyu and earn his place inside Lin Mu's group. Shen Xinyu quietly eats the food Zhao gave her, still surprised that he asked for absolutely nothing in return. Sister Hua uses the private moment to ask how well Xinyu actually knows Zhao Tianlei. Xinyu admits Zhao is only a classmate and that they barely spoke before the outbreak. Sister Hua points out that scarce food is now more valuable than money, yet Zhao willingly shared his supply with both of them. Xinyu cannot explain his kindness because she still does not understand what kind of person he truly is. Treating Xinyu like a younger sister, Sister Hua says she must help her find someone dependable before their situation worsens. Xinyu trusts Sister Hua completely and allows her to speak honestly. Sister Hua explains that fame and beauty offered protection before, but they may attract dangerous attention now that society has collapsed. Since neither woman can fight effectively, Sister Hua believes finding a trustworthy protector may be their safest option. Xinyu refuses to purchase security by surrendering her freedom to some powerful man. Sister Hua agrees that most offers come with hidden conditions, but she believes Zhao's kindness was sincere. She finally asks Xinyu what she personally thinks about Zhao. The question immediately leaves Xinyu flustered because her opinion of him has already begun changing. Zhao unexpectedly appears nearby and catches both women in the middle of their private discussion. Xinyu hides her embarrassment while Sister Hua pretends their conversation was completely ordinary. Zhao rejoins Wu Bin and Si-tong, who can immediately tell something awkward happened inside the corridor. Wu Bin decides this is the perfect time to announce that Si-tong has been acting jealous around Xinyu. He keeps analyzing everyone's feelings like the apocalypse somehow promoted him into the group's romance expert. Zhao dismisses the teasing and praises Si-tong as kind, approachable, and every bit as beautiful as Xinyu. A terrified scream from the upper floor abruptly ends their conversation. Every survivor looks upward as the screen cuts off and a heavy impact echoes to the library. Xinyu and Sister Hua rush out of the corridor realizing something terrible has happened. Students crowd toward the center of the hall while desperately asking what caused the commotion. They discover that one of the young women taken upstairs has died. The crowd recognizes her as someone Qian Hao delivered to Lin Mu's group and immediately blames them for her death. Lin Mu shows no remorse and complains that she rejected him after accepting his food and water. From the upper railing, Lin Mu and Qian Hao watch the aftermath as though another person's life meant nothing. Zhao's anger surges because Lin Mu has turned limited supplies into a weapon for exploiting vulnerable classmates. Wu Bin holds him back before rage sends him charging upstairs alone. Si Tuong reminds Zhao that Lin Mu has too many followers for a direct confrontation to end safely. Zhao knows they are right, since attacking now could leave all three of them surrounded. Instead of forgetting what happened, he quietly fixes every guilty face into his memory. Zhao removes his jacket and walks toward the student while the entire hall watches. He gently covers her so that Lin Mu's cruelty cannot take away any more of her dignity. The simple act leaves many survivors ashamed that they only stood nearby and whispered. Zhao closes her eyes and gives her the respect that Lin Mu's group refused to show. He He promises that everyone responsible for her suffering will eventually face the consequences. Lin Mu becomes furious when Zhao condemns him openly in front of the entire library. His followers threaten the students below, but nobody moves to carry out the order. Even Qian Hao warns Lin Mu that attacking Zhao now could turn the entire first floor against them. The survivors admit they once feared Lin Mu because of his powerful father, but that influence means little during the apocalypse. Lin Mu realizes that one reckless command could cause hundreds of desperate students to overwhelm his small group. Unable to retaliate safely, he settles for warning Zhao that this insult will not be forgotten. Zhao ignores the demand that he kneel and walks away, leaving Lin Mu shouting at someone who no longer fears him. The tragedy drains the remaining energy from the hall, and exhausted survivors eventually settle into an uneasy silence. Repeated pounding against the main entrance suddenly awakens Zhao. Shadows gather beyond the glass as more infected students begin striking the door together. The growing crowd outside presses against the entrance with enough force to make the entire structure shake. Panic spreads as students demand that someone strengthen the door before the infected break through. Zhao silences the shouting because fear without organization will only waste a remaining time. He orders the boys to move bookcases while the girls gather desks and chairs for the barricade. The survivors finally cooperate and begin dragging every heavy object toward the entrance. Furniture piles against the doors, buying them time without solving the larger problem. Zhao realizes nobody has been guarding the emergency exit while everyone focused on the front. He leads Wu Bin and Sitong toward the back corridor before infected students can surround the building from both sides. A desperate cry for help from the main hall forces the group to turn around. The nearby survivors stand frozen as a familiar figure rises among them. The student who died earlier has reanimated as an infected creature inside the barricaded library. Sitong cannot understand how someone who seemed dead could suddenly begin moving again. Wu Bin realizes she must have been infected earlier and transformed after her death. The creature immediately charges toward the closest living student. Its terrified target backs away and begs everyone nearby to help him. He loses his footing while trying to escape through the crowded hall. The infected student reaches him before anyone else has the courage to intervene. The victim struggles desperately while the surrounding classmates scatter. Zhao rushes forward and stops the infected attacker before it can continue through the crowd. Knowing the injured student will transform next, Zhao removes the second threat before another outbreak begins inside the library. The witnesses recoil from his decision, but nobody can deny what would have happened if he hesitated. Before the hall can recover, the barricaded front entrance begins collapsing under the pressure outside. The infected force their way inside and send the survivors running toward the stairs. Another student notices movement near the emergency exit and realizes the back door is failing too. More infected students pour through the rear entrance, trapping everyone between two advancing crowds. Zhao orders Wu Bin to protect Sitong while he clears a route through the chaos. Wu Bin shields Sitong and keeps her behind him as terrified students push from every direction. The crowd surges toward the staircase with no regard for anyone unable to keep pace. Students are knocked from their footing as the narrow escape route becomes dangerously congested. Those still standing race toward the upper floors while the infected spread across the lobby below. Zhao forces his way through the stampede and tries to keep his companions within sight. Several survivors fall beneath the rushing crowd, but panic prevents anyone from stopping to help. A group reaches the curator's office and pounds desperately against its locked door. They beg Lin Mu to let them inside because the office is one of the few rooms that can still be secured. The knocking grows more frantic as the infected climb closer. Lin Mu and Qian Hao remain protected behind the barricaded office, while their classmates plead outside. Lin Mu refuses to open the door and tells everyone else to survive on their own. The stampede separates Xinyu from Sister Hua and nearly carries her toward the infected crowd. Zhao reaches through the chaos and catches Xinyu's hand before she is pulled away. Xinyu looks up in shock and realizes Zhao has found her again. With no time for explanations, Zhao tells Xinyu to follow him and leads her toward another escape route. Zhao pulls Xinyu through the crowd and explains that going upstairs would only trap them among more infected students. With no safer plan of her own, Xinyu agrees to trust him and keeps moving. Wu Bin waves from the end of the corridor, where he and Sitong have found a room they can temporarily secure. Zhao and Xinyu race toward them before the infected crowd closes the distance. Sister Hua catches up, allowing all 5 survivors to reach the emergency corridor together. Zhao throws everyone inside and slams the heavy door before anything can follow. Wu Bin and Sitong finally notice which room they entered and immediately regret checking the sign. Their brilliant escape route has delivered 3 women directly into the men's restroom. Sister Hua cannot believe Wu Bin attends this school without knowing where the library's emergency exit leads. The infected students begin pounding against the door before Wu Bin can defend his terrible campus knowledge. Sister Hua declares that being trapped inside a men's restroom may somehow be more embarrassing than the apocalypse. Zhao stares at her in silence because this is not the moment he expected anyone to become picky about shelter. He explains that most infected students followed the fleeing crowd upstairs, leaving the area outside this room relatively clear. Zhao tells Wu Bin to inspect the high window and confirm whether the roof beneath it is safe. After being lifted high enough to see outside, Wu Bin nervously checks the walkway below. He spots no infected nearby and notices an abandoned car sitting across the playground. Zhao sends Wu Bin through first so he can stand below and help the others descend. Wu Bin drops onto the exterior walkway and quickly steadies himself. With the door weakening behind them, Zhao orders the 3 women outside while he remains last to guard the room. Si Tong refuses to accept that order and insists Zhao should escape before her. Jinyu thanks Zhao for protecting her again before taking his hand and approaching the window. Her sincere gratitude leaves Zhao briefly flustered despite everything collapsing around them. Sister Hua warns him not to use the rescue as an excuse to get too comfortable around Xinyu. Yinyu jumps from the ledge and Wu Bin catches her before she loses her balance. Sister Hua follows with far less confidence and needs both Wu Bin and Xinyu to keep her upright. When Si Tong's turn arrives, she asks how Zhao plans to reach a window positioned far above his own head. She points out that the bare wall offers him no foothold once everyone else is gone. Zhao promises to improvise, but Si Tong demands an actual plan before she leaves him behind. The violent pounding against the door ends their argument and proves they have almost no time remaining. Zhao grabs Si Tong's wrist and orders her toward the window, while she insists on staying to help him hold the door. He tells Si Tong that being class monitor does not mean sacrificing herself when she has no way to stop the infected. Zhao claims she would only become another person he must protect, deliberately using harsh words to make her leave. The rejection cuts deeply because Si Tong understands he's trying to push her away for her own safety. She agrees to go but asks Zhao to listen to one final thing first. Zhao reluctantly gives her the moment despite the door shaking behind him. Si Tong kisses his cheek and admits that she has fallen for him. Through her tears, she asks Zhao to promise that he will survive and find them afterward. Zhao gives her that promise even though he has no idea whether he can keep it. With their feelings finally spoken aloud, he tells Si Tong they must finish escaping now. Zhao braces beneath her and lifts Si Tong high enough to reach the window. The door cracks open behind them, allowing infected hands to reach through the widening gap. Zhao shifts beneath Si Tong and keeps pushing her upward while the barrier collapses. Several infected students seize him from behind as he uses both arms to support her. One infected hand tears across Zhao's arm, leaving the infection inside his body before he can pull free. Si Tong sees him being overwhelmed and screams his name from the window. Zhao uses his remaining strength to push her outside and orders her to leave immediately. Si Tong can only watch through tears as Zhao disappears behind the broken door. She drops onto the walkway, where Wu Bin and the others catch her before she falls. From inside, Zhao tells Wu Bin to take everyone away and find shelter without waiting for him. Si Tong begs Zhao to stay alive and reminds him that he just made her a promise. Wu Bin leads the group toward the abandoned car, while all 4 silently hope Zhao will somehow follow. Surrounded by infected students, Zhao apologizes to Si Tong because keeping his promise already feels impossible. He forces down the fear and decides that dying slowly is not an option, while his friends still need time. Even as infected hands close around him, Zhao refuses to let his body collapse. He opens the damaged door and draws the crowd deeper inside, buying the others a clearer route across campus. The infected rush him together, forcing Zhao to fight through every opening he can create. Their numbers continue increasing until reaching the exit becomes nearly impossible. Outside, Wu Bin guides the 3 women toward the abandoned car Zhao identified earlier. Everyone climbs inside and Wu Bin reaches for the ignition before the surrounding area becomes dangerous again. Si Tong grabs his arm and stops him from starting the vehicle. She refuses to leave campus until Zhao emerges from the library and joins them. Sister Hua asks what happens if they wait until the infected discover the car and Zhao never appears. She warns that the library could release another crowd at any moment, leaving the parked vehicle surrounded. Sister Hua prioritizes the group's survival, but Xinyu is disturbed by how quickly that means abandoning Zhao. Wu Bin admits he wants to return too, yet Zhao personally ordered him to protect the others and escape. Si Tong cannot accept that the person she just confessed to may already be gone. She tries to leave the car, forcing Wu Bin to grab her before she runs back toward the library. Wu Bin explains that Zhao entrusted Si Tong to him, so allowing her to return would betray his final request. Xinyu asks Si Tong to trust that Zhao had a reason for sending them away and to follow his instructions for now. Si Tong still cannot understand how one exhausted student could survive against such a large crowd alone. Fear overwhelms her as she imagines what may already be happening inside. Wu Bin answers with simple confidence that the person fighting in there is Zhao Tianlei. Si Tong finally stops resisting, although leaving him behind tears her apart. Xinyu and Sister Hua remain silent because neither woman can promise that Wu Bin's faith will be rewarded. Wu Bin starts the engine and prepares to honor Zhao's request before the escape route closes. The car accelerates across the empty playground and carries the group away from the library. Inside the building, the floors are covered with the aftermath of the survivors' failed escape. Rain begins falling across the campus and slowly washes through the abandoned grounds. The light drizzle becomes a heavy downpour that erases the sounds of the ruined school. Zhao reaches the rooftop barely conscious, breathing through the pain spreading across his infected body. His fire axe remains beside him as proof that he fought long enough for the others to escape. He staggers across the rooftop while dragging his supplies, refusing to stop until he reaches a safer position. Exhaustion and infection begin shutting his body down faster than his determination can resist. Zhao takes several unsteady steps before his legs finally give way beneath him. Virtual God warns that biochemical infection has spread throughout Host Zero and orders immediate use of the evolution fluid. Zhao retrieves the green vial and wonders whether this last gamble will save him or finish the job. With no other option remaining, he injects the entire dose directly into his arm. The evolution fluid reacts violently and sends Zhao crashing into the rooftop structure as his transformation begins. Barely conscious in the rain, Zhao remembers that the evolution fluid is his only remaining chance against the infection. The ring responds to his condition and opens the storage function containing the emergency vial. A beam of light releases the evolution fluid from its protected storage space. Zhao grips the syringe while wondering whether injecting another virus will save him or create something worse. Since the fluid is not a vaccine, he knows there is no guarantee the transformation will remain human. With death already spreading through his body, Zhao accepts the risk and injects the entire dose. Nothing happens immediately, leaving him worried that the precious medicine may have failed. The reaction finally begins as severe pain spreads through every part of his body. His condition worsens rapidly while the two viruses battle for control inside him. A violent storm covers the campus as Zhao loses consciousness beneath the rain. Morning arrives with Zhao still alive, lying alone on the track beside his abandoned supplies. Every infected wound has vanished, confirming that the evolution fluid successfully restored his body. Zhao apologizes for doubting the system, while Virtual God insists on receiving its full honored title. The system announces that Zhao has evolved into a private soldier with major increases to strength, agility, defense, recovery, and storage capacity. Hearing his first rank makes Zhao assume he has already become impressively powerful. Virtual God quickly corrects him by explaining that Private Soldier is only one of 19 military evolution levels. The ranking system stretches from basic soldiers to officers and generals, making Zhao's new position look far less impressive. Zhao protests that mankind's supposed savior should not be sitting near the bottom of the entire ladder. Virtual God explains that ordinary evolvers begin as basic privates, while Zhao's earlier kills earned him an immediate promotion. Each infected creature grants 1 experience point, and Zhao will need another 150 to advance again. Virtual God ends the conversation and returns to sleep, casually leaving humanity's future in Zhao's extremely confused hands. Unable to feel the difference yet, Zhao decides to test his improved strength against something solid. He notices a heavy rooftop structure nearby and chooses it as the target. Zhao launches his fire axe with far more speed than he intended. The axe crashes through the structure and tears apart material that should have stopped it easily. Zhao realizes even this low military rank has transformed him, and Wu Bin would lose his mind seeing the result. With the infected scattered away from the library, Zhao begins searching nearby buildings for any survivors left behind. Most rooms are abandoned, with scattered belongings showing how quickly everyone fled. Zhao eventually enters the curator's private suite and finds it completely empty. The untouched room confirms that Lin Mu and his followers already escaped through another route. Zhao is briefly distracted by how luxurious the curator's private bathroom is compared with the student facilities. After an entire night in the rain, he decides cleanliness is one resource worth using immediately. Zhao washes away the dirt from the outbreak and finally gets a moment to breathe. Once dressed enough to rest, he turns on the television and discovers an emergency broadcast is still operating. The government reports that survivor bases are being established and military units are searching for people who remain sheltered. Zhao's relief disappears when a sudden noise comes from somewhere inside the suite. He rises immediately and scans the room for whoever may be hiding nearby. Zhao grabs his axe and approaches the source without assuming that every survivor is friendly. The sound leads him to a closet, which he opens while remaining ready to defend himself. A terrified young woman curls inside and begs him not to attack her. Zhao freezes when he realizes the supposed threat is an exhausted student. He lowers his weapon and assures her that he is human and has no intention of hurting her. The woman finally looks at him, although fear and exhaustion still leave her close to tears. Zhao explains that he came searching for survivors, and offers to help her leave the building safely. Once they sit down, the accumulated fear of the past day finally overwhelms her. Zhao gives her time to recover and understands that whatever happened upstairs left her deeply shaken. She introduces herself as Cheng Yao and explains that she came to borrow books shortly before the outbreak began. After she and her friend became trapped, Qianhao offered food and persuaded them to follow him upstairs to Linmu. Linmu's group harassed both women, and Cheng Yao's friend did not survive what they put her through. When infected students breached the library, Cheng Yao hid while Linmu's group escaped through a rope made from curtains. The rope broke before her turn, and fear kept Cheng Yao hidden inside the closet after everyone abandoned her. Zhao becomes furious that Linmu's group saved themselves without even checking whether Cheng Yao could follow. He introduces himself as Zhao Tianlei and promises that she no longer has to face the situation alone. Cheng Yao recognizes his name as the student who confronted Linmu and punished Qianhao downstairs. She praises Zhao for standing up when everyone else remained silent, leaving him embarrassed by this sudden admiration. Cheng Yao admits she almost failed to recognize him without his usual clothes, which makes Zhao notice his current appearance. He suddenly remembers that he returned from the shower wearing only shorts and hurriedly covers himself with a cushion. Zhao puts on a shirt and changes the subject by asking when Cheng Yao last ate. He retrieves bread and water from storage and offers them without requesting anything in exchange. The simple kindness brings Cheng Yao to tears after a day of fear, hunger, and betrayal. Zhao awkwardly comforts her and admits that crying women are one situation his new strength cannot help him handle. After eating, Cheng Yao asks permission to use the shower because she spent hours trapped inside the cramped closet. Zhao agrees and gives her complete privacy inside the bathroom. Cheng Yao turns on the water and finally begins washing away the dirt and exhaustion. The warm shower gives her the first peaceful moment she has experienced since the outbreak began. Afterward, Cheng Yao steps out wrapped securely in a towel while carrying her clothes. She approaches the living room where Zhao is still watching the emergency broadcast. Zhao senses someone behind him and begins turning before Cheng Yao can speak. Still embarrassed, Cheng Yao asks him to look away so she can change into her clothes. Cheng Yao finishes showering, and Zhao asks whether she is finally ready to come back into the room. She steps outside wrapped in a towel, still embarrassed about appearing in front of Zhao like this. Zhao politely points her toward the bread and water instead of making the situation more uncomfortable. Holding the food reminds Cheng Yao of her dead friend, and the grief she suppressed begins returning. Zhao notices the tears and gently teases that he has never met anyone who cries as easily as her. Cheng Yao admits the bread reminds her of her friend and blames herself for following Qianhao upstairs. She believes refusing Qianhao's offer would have kept her friend away from Linmu and saved her life. Zhao explains that her friend had already been infected, so Cheng Yao did not cause what happened. Her fear shifts toward the future because she has nowhere safe to go once they leave the school. Zhao tells her about the government survivor base and believes his missing friends may already be heading there. Since Cheng Yao has no reliable destination, Zhao offers to let her travel with him. The invitation catches her off guard because she expected him to leave once she was safely fed. Cheng Yao accepts immediately, making it clear that staying beside Zhao is now her only plan. Zhao retrieves spare clothes from his backpack and hopes something prepared at the dormitory will fit her. Before taking them, Cheng Yao suddenly leans forward and kisses Zhao. Zhao's mind goes completely blank as he tries to process what just happened. He pulls away in panic and demands an explanation for the surprise attack on his remaining social skills. Cheng Yao says Zhao saved her life, and she believes the only thing she can offer in return is herself. That answer terrifies Zhou far more effectively than any infected student managed yesterday. He insists this is the worst possible time for jokes, and asks her to stop saying things like that. Cheng Yao makes it clear she is serious and asks whether he truly dislikes the idea of her staying beside him. Zhao turns bright red, which only makes her wonder whether he somehow developed a fever. Once Cheng Yao realizes that was his first real kiss, Zhao retreats before the embarrassment finishes him. He argues that relatives kissed his face when he was younger, but Cheng Yao refuses to count those. She keeps teasing Zhao about his first kiss while he desperately asks her to let the subject die. A desperate announcement suddenly echoes across campus from students trapped inside the broadcasting room. Zhao immediately realizes that another group survived the library collapse and remains trapped elsewhere at school. He decides to rescue them because their repeated broadcasts will draw every nearby infected student toward the building. The warning has already attracted infected students who begin filling the hallway and striking the broadcasting room door. Inside, the trapped survivors panic as the entrance weakens and their available options disappear. Zhao climbs a nearby tree and reaches the broadcasting room window without entering the infected building. The students crowd toward him with relief, believing someone has finally arrived to lead them out. Zhao orders everyone to lower their voices before their excitement attracts even more infected students. They explain that the building is overrun and the broadcasting room is the final barrier keeping them alive. Zhao gives them a rope and orders them to secure it inside before climbing down one person at a time. The survivors take control of the rope and prepare the escape route exactly as Zhao instructed. Several students wrap the rope tightly around a sturdy support to keep it from slipping under their weight. The first survivor climbs through the window and carefully begins descending the outside wall. Cheng Yao helps him reach the ground, while Zhao watches for infected students approaching through the trees. With the route working, Zhao calls for each survivor to descend quickly without crowding the rope. Another student slides toward the ground while struggling to control his speed. Cheng Yao catches the next survivor and guides her safely away from the wall. Only Li Yali remains upstairs, but fear leaves him clinging to the rope without enough courage to descend. His grip slips before anyone can reassure him, sending Li Yali crashing onto the pavement below. The noise alerts the nearby infected students and sends the entire group turning toward the survivors. Zhao sees the crowd closing in and realizes their quiet escape has officially fallen apart. He orders everyone toward the parking lot, where an abandoned vehicle may still offer a way off campus. The group reaches a white SUV before the infected students can surround the open courtyard. Everyone fights to squeeze inside, but the vehicle does not have enough seats for the entire group. Li Yali refuses to leave the car because stepping outside now would place him directly beside the infected crowd. The other survivors blame him for attracting the infected and demand that he sacrifice his place instead of endangering them. Disgusted by the argument, Cheng Yao tells Zhao to let the group leave because she would rather remain with him. She points out that these students abandoned their rescuer over one seat, proving they would discard her just as quickly. Even some passengers recognize the group as unstable and admit following Zhao might actually be safer. An infected roar interrupts the argument and reminds Zhao that none of them have time to debate loyalty. Cheng Yao looks toward Zhao, waiting for him to decide whether they should keep fighting for space. The passengers suddenly shut them out and order Zhao and Cheng Yao away from the overloaded vehicle. Zhao curses their ingratitude after risking his life to rescue people who abandoned him within minutes. The driver offers a weak apology before accelerating away and leaving both of them behind. With the vehicle gone, Zhao grabs Cheng Yao's hand and leads her away before the infected arrive. They eventually find an abandoned convenience store still stocked with drinks and packaged food. While Zhao reorganizes his supplies, Cheng Yao gathers the frozen ingredients and prepares them a proper meal. She produces a steaming pot filled with noodles, vegetables, sausages, fish balls, and everything else the store offered. Zhao stares at the enormous serving because Cheng Yao apparently cooks for an evacuation center rather than 2 people. She nervously explains that the store mostly contained frozen food, so she combined whatever ingredients seemed edible. One taste convinces Zhao that her improvised meal is much better than either of them expected. He thanks Cheng Yao and invites her to stop watching him eat before the entire pot disappears. Cheng Yao replies that taking care of Zhao feels natural now that she has chosen to remain beside him. Her wording makes Zhao choke on his noodles and question when their partnership became this serious. Cheng Yao reminds him that she promised to devote herself to him as repayment for saving her. Zhao puts down his chopsticks and firmly tells Cheng Yao that she cannot treat herself like a debt. He explains that rescuing someone does not create ownership, and she owes him nothing for refusing to abandon her. Cheng Yao quietly says she understands the difference between gratitude and obligation. What surprises Zhao is her admission that repayment is no longer the real reason she wants to stay. Cheng Yao confesses that she genuinely likes Zhao and wants to become his girlfriend. Cheng Yao suddenly leans in for a kiss, catching Tianlei completely off guard. Tianlei immediately pushes her back and tells her not to do anything reckless. Hurt by the rejection, Cheng Yao quietly asks whether he hates her. He insists he does not, but she only gets more confused and starts crying again. Tianlei finally admits the problem is that he already has feelings for someone else. Cheng Yao guesses Ye Sitong since Tianlei risked his life to protect her earlier. He explains that Ye Sitong is only a close friend who has always treated him kindly. That answer leaves Cheng Yao desperate to know who actually has his attention. With nowhere left to hide, Tianlei names the famous celebrity Shen Qinyu. Cheng Yao nearly jumps out of her shoes and immediately assumes Shen Qinyu is his girlfriend. Tianlei corrects her fast because right now the relationship exists entirely inside his imagination. Cheng Yao calms down when she realizes his impossible romance has not even started. She awkwardly tells Tianlei to stay confident, and he accepts the encouragement without arguing. The apocalypse has erased most social differences, since zombies do not care whether their meal was rich or poor. Cheng Yao believes Tianlei is extraordinary, and says troubled times are exactly when people like him rise. Her speech sounds so grand that Tianlei jokes she is assigning him an imperial harem before lunch. Cheng Yao's serious stare makes it clear she is thinking about survival rather than some harmless fantasy. Tianlei realizes the new world has made protection more valuable than money, status, or promises. Cheng Yao admits that without someone dependable beside her, one bad encounter could end everything. She insists on joining Tianlei as his girlfriend, partner, cook, maid, or whatever role keeps her beside him. Tianlei promises to protect her without demanding chores, and Cheng Yao lights up at the answer. Overwhelmed by relief, she rewards him with a quick kiss on the cheek. Tianlei immediately short-circuits while Cheng Yao acts like one tiny kiss could not possibly cause this much damage. With their awkward agreement settled, the pair opens the store's secured route into the underground garage. The garage reveals an entire collection of vehicles left behind by the wealthy store owner. Cheng Yao explains that the owner had plenty of money and apparently spent a good portion of it collecting cars. They choose a roomy SUV because it offers better comfort, stability, and space than the smaller vehicles. Tianlei's car knowledge finally becomes useful as Cheng Yao drives them away from the store. The empty road gives her permission to push the accelerator much harder than Tianlei expected. Cheng Yao enjoys every second, while her passenger begins reconsidering whether surviving the zombies was the easier part. Tianlei accuses her of driving like an anime street racer who somehow found an SUV. She happily admits that speeding down an open highway has always been one of her dreams. Once the excitement settles, Cheng Yao asks where they are actually supposed to find the survivor base. Tianlei checks the map because the emergency broadcast ended before giving them a precise location. Together they compare the available roads and search for the most likely route towards safety. 3 desperate survivors suddenly appear in the highway and wave directly in front of the speeding SUV. Cheng Yao freezes for a moment while Tianlei warns her before the distance disappears. She jerks the wheel and slams the brakes to avoid running straight through them. The SUV swerves across the road as the tires fight for enough grip to stop. It finally comes to a halt with the frightened strangers still standing directly ahead. The trio begs to be let inside, claiming they barely escaped and will be caught if the car leaves. Cheng Yao waits for Tianlei's decision while he weighs compassion against the obvious risk. He chooses to help, allowing all 3 survivors inside before Cheng Yao continues driving. The newcomers thank them, but the sudden crowd instantly changes the atmosphere inside the SUV. The orange-haired woman leans close to Tianlei and warns everyone not to let themselves get surrounded again. Tianlei asks who they are and why an entire family ended up stranded on the highway. She introduces the green-haired man as her boyfriend and the red-haired survivor as her younger brother. Their outing collapsed when the outbreak began, their vehicle overturned, and they were forced to wait for help. The woman quickly starts probing Tianlei and Cheng Yao's relationship by asking whether they are a couple. Cheng Yao turns bright red while Tianlei desperately reminds her that driving still requires looking at the road. The stranger then wonders how 2 ordinary students ended up driving such an expensive SUV. Before Tianlei can answer, she asks whether the bag contains anything they can eat. She offers an expensive watch in exchange, still behaving as though old-world luxury prices mean something. Tianlei gives them food but refuses the watch, since jewelry has become useless compared with supplies. The woman immediately takes several sausages and starts distributing them through the back seat. Her boyfriend and brother complain that the portion is too small despite receiving it for free. Cheng Yao reminds them that food is scarce, and their hosts barely have enough for themselves. The green-haired boyfriend reacts badly to being corrected and challenges her to repeat it. His girlfriend stops the argument, tells everyone to quit complaining, and orders the group to eat. Tianlei watches them through the mirror, increasingly certain that their friendly act is covering something. Cheng Yao suddenly recognizes the overturned vehicle her teachers used when they abandoned the school. The car now lies ruined and surrounded by zombies, proving their escape did not carry them very far. Cheng Yao keeps the SUV moving and passes the crash without slowing near the gathered undead. The zombies groan around the overturned vehicle as the living passengers disappear down the highway. The sight makes the newcomers nervous, and they urge Cheng Yao to keep driving. Once the danger is behind them, the SUV continues along a quieter stretch of road. Tianlei concludes that the teachers encountered zombies, panicked behind the wheel, and overturned the vehicle. Cheng Yao feels no sympathy after they abandoned everyone else and says they received exactly what they deserved. The orange-haired woman and her boyfriend exchange a silent look that makes their story feel even less convincing. She recommends bypassing downtown because the area ahead should contain both heavy traffic and large numbers of zombies. Tianlei says nothing, but her sudden interest in controlling the route confirms his suspicion. When the road stays clear, the strangers agree this is a convenient place to make their move. Tianlei offers to pull over ahead and let the trio continue on their own. The green-haired boyfriend answers by pressing a handgun toward Tianlei and ordering him to obey. Cheng Yao panics, while the younger brother casually tells her to calm down. Tianlei demands their real identities, now that the grateful survivor performance has ended. The woman claims they are not evil, only desperate people doing whatever survival now requires. The gunman claims their earlier help earned them mercy, but only if they surrender the SUV and every bit of food. He warns that the younger brother has already killed 3 people and becomes dangerous when his patience runs out. Instead of backing down, the woman tells her boyfriend to stop wasting time and fire. The younger brother objects because the commotion could attract zombies, revealing that even this group cannot agree on the plan. Cheng Yao finally understands that the people they rescued were waiting for a vehicle worth stealing. The woman orders Cheng Yao to stop the SUV unless she wants Tianlei shot. The SUV keeps moving while the gunman threatens to shoot Tianlei unless Cheng Yao obeys. Cheng Yao knows driving away could get Tianlei hurt, but stopping would leave both of them helpless. Caught between those choices, she looks toward Tianlei and waits for him to decide. Tianlei calmly agrees to surrender the SUV as long as the robbers keep their promise. The woman assures him that credibility matters, which is rich coming from someone currently stealing a car. Trusting Tianlei's judgment, Cheng Yao reluctantly pulls toward the side of the road. She breaks in an open area where no abandoned vehicles can hide nearby zombies. Once the doors unlock, Tianlei grabs their supplies and steps out beside Cheng Yao. He starts walking away with her, but the robbers immediately order them to stop. The green-haired gunman says Tianlei may leave while Cheng Yao and the supplies stay behind. Cheng Yao freezes as the exact outcome she feared becomes reality. The younger brother argues that his sister already has a boyfriend, while he deserves Cheng Yao for himself. Even the gunman begins reconsidering because Cheng Yao is apparently too attractive to release. Terrified by their intentions, Cheng Yao can only call Tianlei's name. Tianlei's quiet expression shows that his cooperation has officially reached its limit. He takes Cheng Yao's hand and keeps walking as though the three criminals no longer matter. Furious at being ignored, the gunman storms from the SUV and raises his weapon. He aims straight at Tianlei and assumes one pulled trigger will end the resistance. Tianlei moves first and uses the axe to disable the gunman's arm before he can fire. The threat against Cheng Yao has turned Tianlei's caution into cold anger. The gunman drops to his knees and realizes far too late that this student is not defenseless. Tianlei repeats the man's earlier threat and asks whether shooting him still sounds easy. The woman charges with a knife while her younger brother draws another gun to protect her. Cheng Yao spots the attack from behind and shouts a warning. Tianlei reacts instantly and sends the younger brother crashing away before he gets a clear shot. He snatches the fallen pistol before either remaining attacker can reach it. Using his improved reflexes, Tianlei fires directly at the knife in the woman's hand. The blade spins across the road and leaves all three robbers completely disarmed. The woman stares at Tianlei with the fear she expected him to show. Tianlei realizes the evolution fluid improved his speed, eyesight, hearing, and control far beyond normal limits. With resistance finished, the woman begs for mercy and claims desperation forced them into this robbery. Tianlei rejects that excuse because survival does not require destroying every innocent person they meet. She plays helpless and insists a lone woman had no other way to stay alive. Her story changes again as she blames her boyfriend and claims he forced the siblings into crime. Desperate to escape punishment, she clings to Tianlei and offers to do anything he requests. Cheng Yao openly calls her shameless, which is honestly the mildest possible description. Tianlei slowly repeats the offer and lets the woman believe her manipulation is working. She eagerly confirms that he can demand absolutely anything from her. Pressing against him, she insults Cheng Yao's inexperience and offers to replace her as his companion. Tianlei tells the woman to relax and promises that he personally will not kill her. For one painful second, Cheng Yao wonders whether Tianlei has actually accepted the offer. He immediately clarifies that he wants nothing from someone willing to betray everyone around her. Taking Cheng Yao's hand, Tianlei explains that the recent gunshot will attract every zombie nearby. The two criminals may stay behind and deal with the guests their own noise has invited. The woman finally understands what his promise not to kill her actually meant. Tianlei and Cheng Yao climb into the SUV and speed away without looking back. The woman desperately chases the vehicle, knowing the road behind her is no longer safe. A large group of zombies emerges from the surrounding area and follows the sound. Her screams fade into the distance while the SUV disappears along the highway. Inside the vehicle, Cheng Yao's shaking hands reveal how deeply the encounter affected her. Tianlei gently asks whether his actions frightened her. He admits he never wanted to hurt anyone, but doing nothing would have allowed the criminals to destroy them. This new world will keep forcing ugly decisions, so neither of them can survive by avoiding reality forever. Cheng Yao agrees that zombies are horrible but cruel people can be far more calculating. She promises to become stronger so fear will never turn her into a burden Tianlei must constantly protect. Her determination reassures Tianlei more than any dramatic promise could. Cheng Yao says she is not afraid of seeing him fight people who threaten their lives. What truly terrifies her is being abandoned again while everyone walks away without even looking back. Tianlei is the first person who returned for her, making him both emotionally precious and essential to her survival. Their conversation stops when Cheng Yao notices the road ahead has become completely blocked. Hundreds of abandoned vehicles fill the highway and make further driving impossible. Tianlei concludes that panic caused a massive traffic jam before survivors abandoned their cars and fled. With downtown visible nearby, they leave the SUV behind and continue the journey on foot. The pair carefully crosses between the silent vehicles while keeping their weapons and supplies close. Chang Yao grows nervous because the area contains no living people and not even a single zombie. Tianlei jokes that ghosts would be an improvement since they usually scare people instead of eating them. Chang Yao reluctantly admits that compared with zombies, ghosts suddenly sound surprisingly polite. A sudden movement beside the cars cuts their conversation short. Chang Yao jumps into Tianlei's arms and immediately declares that the ghost has arrived. Their supernatural threat turns out to be one confused black cat. The cat meows at them while Chang Yao admits the tiny creature nearly stopped her heart. Before Tianlei can tease her further, his enhanced hearing detects something far more serious. He tells Chang Yao that he can hear numerous zombies howling somewhere ahead. Tianlei pulls her behind the vehicles and listens carefully before exposing their position. Chang Yao sees nothing across the open road and struggles to believe a large horde is nearby. Tianlei takes her hand and leads her forward slowly instead of approaching without a plan. His evolved hearing is far more sensitive than before and the sounds are coming from directly ahead. Since zombies only gather like this around prey, Tianlei realizes trapped survivors must be attracting them. Following the horde's cries, Tianlei and Chang Yao reach a commercial building that appears quiet only from above. At street level, dozens of zombies are packed against the entrance and hammering at the doors. Their noise confirms the creatures are not wandering randomly, because living survivors are trapped somewhere inside. Behind a barricade of shelves, the survivors strain to keep the entrance from collapsing under the pressure. Tianlei keeps Chang Yao out of sight and studies the building instead of challenging the entire horde head-on. The concentration of zombies tells him the people inside have already been discovered and are running out of time. Spotting an upper window, he decides climbing there is safer than forcing them through the front entrance. Every impact shakes the makeshift barricade, so the people inside cannot hold their position much longer. Inside, an injured young woman feels herself weakening and quietly asks whether the bite is going to kill her. Her brother Li Su-young refuses to accept that outcome and promises they will find a doctor once they escape. The other survivors see only an infection risk and accuse Li Su-young of endangering everyone by keeping her close. Watching through the upper window, Tianlei and Chang Yao arrive in time to see fear turning the group against two siblings. Li Su-young's girlfriend calls him irrational and demands that he abandon his sister before she transforms. Li Su-young knows the danger, but he cannot throw away the last family member he has left. Another survivor recalls watching his own family turn and argues that one infected person could doom everyone in the store. Li Su-young's girlfriend pushes the crowd toward an immediate execution, presenting cruelty as practical survival. She even reminds him that his sister received the bite while protecting him, as though that sacrifice makes her easier to discard. Li Su-young reveals that his sister trusted this woman as her future sister-in-law and shielded her without hesitation. That betrayal destroys whatever affection he still had, because someone willing to sacrifice his sister does not deserve a place in their family. His girlfriend drops the act and admits she only dated Li Su-young because his family expected several houses as resettlement compensation. Li Su-young ends the relationship on the spot and makes clear that his sister's sacrifice created no debt to this selfish woman. The confession leaves him stunned, but heartbreak has to wait while his sister's life is being debated by a mob. Barely conscious, the girl asks them not to let her become a zombie and hurt the brother she tried to save. His former girlfriend seizes that request and convinces the frightened survivors to kill her before the infection advances. Li Su-young plants himself between the crowd and his sister, warning that anyone who touches her must deal with him first. A muscular survivor accepts the challenge and swings in with a bat, expecting numbers to settle the argument. Li Su-young uses his martial arts training to redirect the charge and throw the larger man onto the floor. That clean counter makes the rest of the crowd hesitate, since their supposed easy target clearly knows how to fight. His ex-girlfriend warns them that Li Su-young trained with the martial arts team and cannot be overwhelmed by only 2 or 3 attackers. The suited instigator solves that problem in the worst possible way, by ordering everyone to rush him together. From the window, Chang Yao condemns a crowd willing to murder the girl who was injured protecting one of them. After their encounter with the highway robbers, she refuses to watch Tianlei risk himself for another group of selfish strangers. Tianlei agrees that most of them are not worth saving, but Li Su-young's loyalty marks him as someone different. Chang Yao points out that loyalty will not stop the sister from transforming and attacking other survivors. Tianlei sees an important distinction, because the crowd protects only itself while Li Su-young is willing to sacrifice himself for family. That stubborn humanity makes Li Su-young exactly the kind of dependable fighter Tianlei wants beside him. Chang Yao is surprised to learn Tianlei is not merely rescuing people but actively choosing his future teammates. Tianlei explains that this world contains human threats as dangerous as zombies, so raw strength alone will never be enough. Rebuilding a safe place requires trustworthy companions, and he intends to form a team capable of protecting more survivors. Cheng Yao finally understands that every stranger Tianlei helps is also revealing whether they deserve to travel with him. Below them, Li Suyang traps another attacker's arm and continues shielding his sister despite being surrounded. He restrains 2 men at once and repeats that touching his sister will have consequences. A third survivor exploits the opening and drives a wooden board into Li Suyang's stomach. With Li Suyang doubled over, the muscular man raises his bat and announces that the infected girl will die first. The crowd leaves her lying helpless on the floor, while nobody steps forward to remember how she saved them. Too weak to move, she can only call for her brother as the attacker closes in. The man orders the others to kill her, enjoying authority he found only after choosing the weakest target. Encouraged by the mob, the survivors shout for the girl to be beaten before she can transform. Li Shuyang struggles against the men holding him and begs them not to hurt his sister. The bat rises for a killing blow while Li Suyang is forced to watch from only a few steps away. Before it lands, Tianlei smashes through the upper glass and drops into the store. The sudden entrance freezes the attacker who did not expect his execution to gain an armed audience. Tianlei lands with his axe ready while Cheng Yao follows, immediately drawing every survivor's attention. The same people who were demanding blood seconds ago now greet the strangers as rescuers and beg for help. Relief spreads through the store as everyone assumes Tianlei came to escort the entire group to safety. Tianlei corrects that assumption by announcing he is taking only one person. Panic returns instantly, and the survivors begin competing to prove why their individual lives matter most. A wealthy company president promises money while Li Shuyang's ex-girlfriend offers charm, forgetting both have terrible exchange rates during an apocalypse. The rescue pitches collapse into an argument with each insulting the other while the zombies continue pounding outside. Tianlei and Cheng Yao watch in silence as the crowd demonstrates his selection process more efficiently than any interview could. By the time the woman calls the old man a pervert, neither candidate has made survival look appealing. Tianlei ignores them all and calmly confirms that the bruised fighter is Li Shuyang. He offers Li Suyang a place in his group and tells him to bring his younger sister along. The entire store falls silent because Tianlei has selected the infected girl and the man everyone just attacked. Li Shuyang cannot understand why a stranger would choose him over dozens of healthy survivors. Another man calls Tianlei insane and warns that carrying the sister means inviting an infected person into his own group. Tianlei answers that zombies outside do not frighten him, so one sick girl will not decide his actions for him. Rather than arguing with the crowd, he gives Li Shuyang the choice of staying here or trusting him. Li Shuyang lifts his sister into his arms and chooses the only person who offered them a future instead of an execution. Tianlei lowers a rope and promises to leave it behind after the siblings are safely outside. He also warns that anyone grabbing it early will have the rope cut and lose their only route out. As Li Shuyang prepares to climb, his former girlfriend suddenly begs him to take her, too. She claims fear confused her and insists she always loved his sister, despite leading the demand for her death. Clinging to Li Shuyang, she invokes their planned marriage and tries to restore the relationship now that he has an escape route. Li Shuyang reminds her that she ended everything herself when she chose compensation houses over his family. He leaves her with a restrained farewell, giving her more kindness than she offered his sister. Her excuses turn into furious insults as Li Shuyang disappears through the window without looking back. Outside, Tianlei and Cheng Yao support the exhausted girl while Li Shuyang finishes climbing to safety. Tianlei reaches down and pulls his new recruit onto the ledge before the survivors below can interfere. Li Shuyang takes control of the rope, proving he intends to contribute rather than become another person Tianlei must carry. Tianlei respects that resolve and tells him his strong personality is precisely why he was chosen. Their brief relief ends when the injured girl coughs up dark blood and begins losing control of her body. Li Shuyang rushes to steady her, terrified that the time he fought to gain may already be gone. Tianlei recognizes the blackened blood as severe infection and warns that her mutation is approaching quickly. Cheng Yao asks how they can protect the group if the girl becomes dangerous before they find help. Li Shuyang faces his trembling sister with no easy answer, while the infection forces Tianlei's new team into its first impossible decision. Li Shuyang thanks them indirectly by promising to leave with his sister before her infection puts anyone else at risk. Tianlei reminds him that escaping alone would waste the effort spent rescuing them, and asks him to think realistically. With zombies spread throughout the city, Li Shuyang cannot honestly promise he can protect his weakened sister by himself. His silence confirms that determination alone will not carry them through the streets. Tianlei tells him to remain with the group until they can find somewhere secure and decide what comes next. Li Shuyang reluctantly accepts because keeping his sister alive matters more than his wounded pride. The four survivors reach an abandoned warehouse where they can finally stop without attracting nearby zombies. Once inside, Li Shuyang's sister admits that the infection is making her feel much worse. Li Suyang holds her tightly and promises that safety and medical treatment are still within reach. Cheng Yao believes false hope will only deepen his pain, though Tianlei stops her from saying it too harshly. Li Suyang refuses to listen and repeats that his sister will recover somehow. Tianlei briefly considers the evolution fluid that saved him, but he has none available and her infection has already progressed too far. Li Suyang shelters his sister against his chest while everyone struggles to address what he refuses to accept. Tianlei finally tells him that preventing more suffering may require a decision no brother should ever face. He offers Li Suyang the axe and says the responsibility belongs to the person his sister trusts most. Li Suyang stares at the weapon in disbelief as Tianlei's meaning becomes painfully clear. Grief turns into anger, and he accuses Tianlei of being no different from the survivors who wanted his sister dead. Even if she transforms, Li Suyang swears that nobody will touch her without going through him first. Chen Yao argues that protecting one infected person cannot justify placing every other survivor in danger. Before the argument worsens, the weakened girl reaches for her brother and interrupts them. She calls Tianlei and Cheng Yao good people and asks Li Suyang not to fight those who saved them. Hearing his sister defend the painful truth breaks through Li Suyang's anger. She admits Tianlei is right because becoming a zombie and hurting innocent people frightens her more than dying. With little time remaining, she asks her brother to respect that choice and fulfill one final wish. Li Suyang blames himself for failing to protect the person who always depended on him. Instead of blaming him, his sister turns toward Tianlei and asks for a personal favor. She explains that Li Suyang can seem rude and reckless, but underneath that attitude he is genuinely kind. Since she can no longer watch over him, she asks Tianlei to keep her impulsive brother from getting himself killed. Tianlei promises that Li Suyang will have people beside him and will not be allowed to throw his life away. The girl also reminds Li Suyang that Lanlan never deserved him and asks him to travel the world someday with someone better. Knowing he might break an ordinary promise, she asks her brother to seal this one with their pinkies. Through his tears, Li Suyang agrees to live and carry out every journey they once planned together. Their fingers link one final time and turn a childhood gesture into the promise holding Li Suyang together. His sister relaxes with a faint smile because she finally believes her brother will not remain alone. Her hand slowly slips away from his as the last of her strength disappears. Li Suyang calls for her desperately, but she no longer responds. Moments later, the infection forces her motionless body upright again. Li Suyang rushes toward her before recognizing that the sister he knew is no longer in control. Cheng Yao warns that the transformation has begun and hesitation will only make the situation more dangerous. Tianlei returns the axe to Li Suyang and reminds him that his sister specifically feared becoming this creature. The transformed girl rises unsteadily as the infection replaces her final peaceful expression. Li Suyang faces her directly, but every memory of his sister makes lifting the weapon impossible. His grip fails completely and the axe crashes onto the warehouse floor. Unable to recognize him, the transformed girl lunges while Li Suyang still cannot defend himself. Tianlei immediately moves between them before Li Suyang's hesitation gets him infected too. With no safe alternative remaining, Tianlei ends the transformation before she can reach her brother. Li Suyang can only stare as the reality he kept rejecting finally becomes permanent. Tianlei quietly apologizes, knowing that saving Li Suyang required doing what the grieving brother could not. They cremate the girl somewhere secluded, so the fire does not attract more zombies toward their position. Li Suyang watches in silence while Tianlei and Cheng Yao give him the space to mourn. He keeps one of his sister's small ornaments as something he can carry through the ruined world. Li Suyang promises that he will still take her around the world and fulfill every dream she entrusted to him. Tianlei asks whether that journey has room for another companion who intends to keep him alive. Li Suyang accepts and chooses to follow Tianlei rather than continue wandering without a purpose. Tianlei reminds him that finding trustworthy companions is exactly what his sister wanted for him. He formally welcomes Li Suyang into the group and offers his hand as an equal teammate. Li Suyang studies Tianlei for a moment and realizes this stranger has already honored his sister's request. Their handshake turns a desperate rescue into the beginning of genuine trust. By nightfall, the group reaches a quiet hotel that appears secure enough for several hours of rest. After checking the suite, Cheng Yao suggests staying because everyone needs sleep before returning to the road. The room still has clean facilities and a working bathroom, which now feels more luxurious than any 5-star service. Cheng Yao celebrates the chance to clean up, while Tianlei checks the windows and surrounding area. Li Suyang lingers awkwardly at the entrance until the others tell him he is part of the group now. Once everyone settles down, Li Suyang admits that everything happened too quickly for him to learn their full names. Tianlei introduces himself and Cheng Yao as students from Central China Business College. Since he is 1 year older, Tianlei tells Li Shuyang to treat him like an older brother from now on. Chang Yao immediately asks how an honest martial artist like Li Shuyang ever ended up dating someone like Lanlin. Li Shuyang explains that their parents died early, leaving him and his younger sister dependent entirely on each other. A relative later introduced Lanlin, and Li Shuyang only discovered today that she wanted his family's resettlement compensation. When the outbreak began at the park, his sister was bitten while protecting Lanlin after she fell during their escape. Chang Yao becomes furious that Lanlin later denied responsibility and encouraged the crowd to kill the girl who saved her. She reassures Li Shuyang that his strength and loyalty will eventually attract someone far better than Lanlin. Chang Yao quickly clarifies that she is already committed elsewhere and grabs Tianlei before anyone gets creative with the matchmaking. Tianlei suddenly interrupts the teasing after his enhanced hearing catches movement outside their room. Neither Chang Yao nor Li Shuyang hears anything, but Tianlei's expression makes the room fall silent. He approaches the door carefully and confirms that several figures are moving through the hallway. A group of zombies rushes toward the suite, turning their peaceful night into another immediate fight. Chang Yao panics at the sounds outside, while Li Shuyang realizes several hotel rooms must have hidden zombies he never found. Tianlei listens carefully and confirms the group is small enough to eliminate without abandoning the hotel. He decides they should clear the corridor now, then finally get the uninterrupted sleep all three desperately need. Li Shuyang is surprised when Tianlei asks him to participate, but Chang Yao encourages him to prove he can handle himself. Tianlei takes the two female zombies and leaves the former security guard to Li Shuyang as his first real test. The zombies notice them at once and rush forward before Li Shuyang can finish preparing himself. Tianlei meets his targets head-on, while the security guard charges directly toward the nervous new recruit. His enhanced speed lets him cut down the first zombie before it can even adjust its attack. The system awards another bonus point, quietly turning the hallway into the worst score counter imaginable. Tianlei sweeps through the remaining attackers and feels his evolved body responding with almost effortless power. Li Shuyang's fight goes much worse as a zombie slips past his weapon and crashes into him. He struggles to hold it back, but fear ruins the martial arts timing he normally relies upon. The long-haired zombie resembles his younger sister closely enough to drag his mind back into the loss he just suffered. For one frozen moment, Li Shuyang stops seeing an attacker and sees the family member he failed to save. The memory overwhelms him, leaving him curled defensively instead of using the weapon already in his hands. The zombie lunges again while Li Shuyang remains trapped between reality and grief. He is knocked down and barely keeps its mouth away from him. Tianlei warns that blocking forever will not solve anything because the creature will keep attacking until one of them falls. More zombies close around Li Shuyang while the sister-like attacker keeps him pinned. Chang Yao sees the formation collapsing and urgently warns Tianlei before Li Shuyang is surrounded. Tianlei drops one approaching zombie with a fast strike, creating a narrow opening around his struggling teammate. Chang Yao forces a nervous laugh while trying to keep the rest from spilling through the nearby doorway. She finally slams the door shut and traps several zombies behind it, leaving Tianlei one immediate rescue to handle. Tianlei rushes toward Li Shuyang and orders him to move his hands before the attacker reaches his throat. Li Shuyang clings to the zombie and admits he cannot bring himself to finish something that resembles his sister. Tianlei intervenes and stops the attack before Li Shuyang's hesitation gets him bitten. He charges through the corridor and clears away the zombies, blocking his path back toward the others. The remaining attackers are knocked aside, but Li Shuyang still has not recovered control of himself. Another zombie pins him down, forcing Chang Yao to call for Tianlei's help again. Instead of immediately rescuing him, Tianlei says a teammate who cannot face one zombie will only endanger everyone later. Tianlei turns away and tells Chang Yao they should return to bed rather than keep saving someone who refuses to fight. Chang Yao protests that leaving him there means allowing the zombies to reunite him with his sister permanently. That brutal reminder finally breaks through Li Shuyang's panic and replaces his paralysis with anger. He drives the zombie away with a desperate strike and creates enough space to stand. Li Shuyang follows with a powerful kick that sends the creature crashing across the corridor. Tianlei watches closely, while Chang Yao realizes Li Shuyang has finally chosen to fight. The zombie reaches for the fallen blade, but Li Shuyang no longer freezes at the sight of her face. He stamps down on her arm and takes control before she can use the weapon. All the fear and guilt he buried since his sister's death explode into one uncontrolled swing. The first strike lands, but Li Shuyang no longer seems capable of stopping himself. He attacks repeatedly as though destroying the zombie could somehow erase everything that happened to his sister. The creature stops moving, yet his grief keeps driving the weapon downward. Tianlei notices Li Shuyang's expression has shifted from fear into a dangerous loss of control. Li Shuyang continues striking long after the threat is gone, trapped in the same panic from the opposite direction. Chang Yao is shaken by the outburst, while Tianlei prepares to stop it before somebody else gets hurt. He orders Li Suyang to stand down because the zombie is already dead and the fight is over. Still blinded by emotion, Li Suyang turns and swings at Tianlei without recognizing what he is doing. Tianlei catches his wrist and blocks the attack before the blade can reach him. He condemns Li Suyang for attacking a teammate, but Li Suyang fires back that Tianlei watched him struggle and did nothing. Tianlei shoves him away and reminds him that without those harsh lessons, he would have died back in the supermarket. The truth cuts through Li Suyang's anger, leaving him quiet enough to finally listen. Tianlei explains that he rescued Li Suyang to gain a dependable partner, not someone who freezes whenever the group needs him. Li Suyang protests that he is not useless and admits the zombie's resemblance to his sister shattered his focus. Tianlei answers that once infection takes over, the person is gone and the creature will never spare him for showing mercy. He deliberately held back because Li Suyang must overcome this mental block before it kills him and everyone fighting beside him. Cheng Yao adds that his sister's final concern was Li Suyang's survival, not his refusal to accept her death. Li Suyang finally lowers his anger and apologizes for acting impulsively and misunderstanding Tianlei's intentions. He bows deeply, thanking Tianlei for saving his life and giving his sister a peaceful end when he could not. Tianlei accepts the apology and makes clear that gratitude now means behaving like a reliable member of the group. Li Suyang calls him Big Brother and promises he will not hesitate or lose control the next time they fight. Tianlei tells him to honor that promise and avoid disappointing the sister who trusted him to keep living. Li Suyang accepts the warning with a steadier expression and a new understanding of what survival requires. By morning, the cleared hotel has given the group enough safety to rest and recover. A television broadcast announces several military survivor bases, with food, armed protection, and room for at least 100,000 people each. Li Suyang is thrilled to learn Survivor Base 6 lies near Yuzhou and matches the direction Tianlei already planned to travel. Cheng Yao notices Tianlei is not celebrating and asks why apparently good news has made him more uneasy. Tianlei admits the bases offer hope, but their limited capacity creates a hidden danger the broadcast never addresses. Cheng Yao asks what could possibly be dangerous about a government shelter protected by the military. Tianlei reminds them that Yuzhou alone held almost 100 million people before the outbreak. Even if only 1/10 survive, 10 million people would still be competing for a base designed to hold 100,000. The shelter may begin as humanity's last hope, but overcrowding will quickly create shortages, factions, and conflict. Early arrivals will control resources, later groups will force their way inside, and every new survivor will make order harder to maintain. Tianlei warns that hunger can destroy social rules completely, recalling a flood story where trapped villagers turned violent and even attacked rescuers. Cheng Yao asks whether the group should abandon the base entirely after hearing that prediction. Tianlei says they must still go because Wu Bin and the other classmates will likely follow the same broadcast. However, he refuses to place their lives entirely in the base's hands and insists they can ultimately rely only on themselves. Cheng Yao and Li Suyang accept the warning, realizing arrival at the base will not automatically solve every problem. A thin red beam suddenly cuts across Li Suyang's face and interrupts the discussion. Tianlei follows the light and asks where it is being projected from. The angle reveals that someone inside the building opposite their hotel is deliberately aiming into the room. Tianlei and Cheng Yao move toward the window while staying alert for whatever the signal might mean. Across the street, several figures are watching their hotel from an upper floor window. The strangers excitedly confirm they have been noticed, proving the three survivors are no longer alone in this part of the city. The survivors across the street crowd the window and desperately beg Tianlei's group to help them escape. Tianlei shouts back, but the buildings are too far apart for either side to understand a word. Li Suyang confidently announces that he knows sign language and volunteers to handle the long-distance conversation. His emergency message quickly turns into an energetic routine that communicates enthusiasm and absolutely nothing useful. Tianlei and Cheng Yao watch him perform with the exhausted silence of people regretting every recent decision. Across the street, the trapped employees stare at Li Suyang's movements and admit they cannot understand him either. Li Suyang sheepishly admits he learned the gestures from television and may have confused sign language with broadcast exercise. Since communication has failed spectacularly, Tianlei decides they will cross over and inspect the building themselves. Inside the office, the employees notice the hotel room has emptied and wonder where the three strangers went. Their argument draws Gu Wiping, the general manager of Tenchi Entertainment, who immediately takes control of the conversation. An employee explains that three survivors in the opposite hotel noticed their signals and might come to help. Gu Wiping snatches the binoculars, suddenly interested now that rescue sounds possible. The hotel room is already empty, but the employee describes three young students who were watching only moments earlier. Learning they are students instead of soldiers crushes Gui Weiping's excitement almost instantly. He dismisses them as children who can barely protect themselves, much less rescue an entire office. Zhang Bingyan arrives and reminds Gu that the students did nothing wrong by failing to meet his expectations. Her secretary Tung Yuxin stays beside her, making it clear the general manager is no longer speaking without supervision. At only 24, Zhang Bingyan is Tianxi Entertainment's chairwoman, and the person everyone still trusts to lead them. The surrounding employees acknowledge her arrival while Gu's earlier confidence starts shrinking. Gu quickly apologizes for losing his temper and pretends his outburst came entirely from concern. He argues that everyone is hungry and suggests sending employees downstairs to search for food or contact the newcomers. Tong Yuxian points out that Gu is the only person demanding more food this urgently. Zhang divided the supplies evenly, but Gu devoured his entire share before half the day had passed. Embarrassed in front of everyone, Gu attacks Tong's rank and insists a secretary cannot challenge the general manager. Zhang stops him and says leadership now means protecting employees, not ordering frightened people into unknown danger. Gu insists waiting is also dangerous because their remaining supplies will not last forever. Zhang believes the government will eventually organize rescue operations, though even she cannot guarantee when help will arrive. Her safer plan is to restore the network, contact the outside world, and request military assistance. She asks everyone to remain united and keep hope alive instead of gambling lives on an unplanned escape. The employees accept her decision, forcing Gu to agree while clearly hating every second of it. Behind his obedient expression, Gu's resentment toward Zhang and Tong only grows stronger. The employees praised Zhang's judgment, adding another small injury to Gu's already wounded pride. Zhang's attention shifts when the foreign director, Yamada, demands to speak with her. Yamada formally protests the company's handling of the crisis and introduces himself like the apocalypse still has a complaints department. He blames Tianxi for leaving him stranded abroad and demands immediate transportation back to his own country. Zhang apologizes for the emergency disrupting their planned technical partnership. Although nobody could have predicted the outbreak, she explains that escorting him outside blindly would endanger him and every employee forced to accompany him. Zhang asks Yamada to remain patient and promises compensation once the crisis has passed. Yamada reluctantly accepts, but warns Zhang that he expects her to honor every promise. She asks Gu to prepare a private office where their demanding guest can wait more comfortably. Gu leads Yamada and his assistants away, hiding his irritation behind professional manners. Once they leave, Zhang finally releases the breath she has been holding through the entire argument. She and Tong walk away from the employees to discuss the situation without causing more panic. Tong quietly asks whether Zhang truly believes the military will send a rescue team for them. Zhang admits she does not know, but says keeping everyone united is their only defense against fear and chaos. With barely 2 days of food remaining, Tong understands restoring communication may be their final realistic attempt. Inside the borrowed office, Yamada ignores the ration crisis and continues eating from his private supply. Gu watches every bite with the haunted focus of a man who spent his own quota before lunch. Yamada complains that this business trip stole his vacation, all while sitting behind enough snacks to open a small store. When he notices Gu lingering, Yamada asks why the general manager has not left. Gu swallows his pride and admits he has been hungry for 2 days before asking for a little food. Yamada refuses, claiming he brought these supplies himself and has no reason to share them. Gu reminds him that Yamada originally claimed to have nothing, causing employees to sacrifice their own portions for his assistance. Yamada's cold response confirms that fairness means nothing to him now that he controls the food. He orders Gu out and threatens to have his assistants remove him if he keeps complaining. Humiliated and starving, Gu turns toward the door while Yamada resumes eating behind him. Every step away hardens Gu's anger, but hunger still keeps him from challenging Yamada directly. Just before Gu leaves, Yamada calls him back with a proposal. Yamada offers food in exchange for a favor, turning basic survival into another business negotiation. Gu immediately agrees to listen, though his nervous expression suggests he already expects something ugly. Yamada admits the partnership never interested him because Zhang Bingyan was his real reason for visiting Tianxi. He offers Gu all the food if Gu isolates Zhang and helps place her under Yamada's control. Gu initially refuses, arguing that betraying his chairwoman would destroy his career and whatever reputation he has left. Yamada laughs at that concern because companies, careers, and normal consequences may no longer exist. He exposes Gu's resentment toward a much younger chairwoman and the secretary who constantly corrects him. The accusation lands because Gu has spent years obeying Zhang while quietly believing her position should belong to him. Yamada promises Gu a powerful position in his own company if their countries ever recover from the disaster. His assistants reinforce the offer with flirtatious promises, making the entire bargain feel even more calculated. Hunger, ambition, and resentment finally win, and Gu agrees to help Yamada lure Zhang away from the others. Gu accepts only after demanding that Yamada honor every reward he has promised. Yamada's smile shows he never doubted that Gu's loyalty had a price. He tosses Gu a packaged meal and proudly claims his people always keep their word. Gu catches the food, already looking less like Zheng's manager and more like Yamada's new accomplice. Back across the street, Tianlei leads Cheng Yao and Li Shuyang into the suspiciously quiet office building. Li Shuyang assumes the zombies have wandered away and the survivors are simply too frightened to leave hiding. Tianlei stops walking when his enhanced hearing catches movement deeper inside the floor. He estimates at least 20 zombies nearby, with more likely waiting on the levels above. Cheng Yao and Li Shuyang hear nothing, but experience has taught them to trust Tianlei's senses. A cluster of zombies emerges ahead, several still clutching oversized decorative blades from the entertainment offices. Tianlei grabs one of the broad swords and throws it toward Li Shuyang. Li Shuyang catches the enormous weapon and immediately realizes this is a serious upgrade from his damaged knife. Tianlei explains that Li needs a dependable weapon, and the heavy blade suits his strength and fighting style. Li Shuyang raises the broadsword carefully and tests whether he can control its weight. A few practice swings confirm his martial arts training can turn the oversized blade into a usable weapon. Satisfied with the balance, Li Shuyang thanks Tianlei and accepts the sword as his new responsibility. Cheng Yao spots movement ahead and warns them that the zombies are closing in. The corridor erupts as the waiting horde rushes toward the 3 survivors at once. Tianlei takes the lead, while ordering Li Shuyang to guard Cheng Yao and prevent anything from reaching their rear. Elsewhere on the upper floor, Gu approaches the manager room where Zheng and Tang are discussing their next move. He knocks politely, beginning Yamada's plan beneath the appearance of an ordinary workplace conversation. Zheng recognizes Gu's voice and asks whether something has happened. Gu claims he has important information and requests a private conversation. Quietly opening the trap Yamada prepared, Gu presents Yamada's supposed self-rescue plan, while Tang quietly warns Zheng that the foreign director has been watching her with disturbing interest. Behind his polite expression, Gu resents both women for questioning him and decides Tang can be delivered to Yamada as well. Because everyone's survival may depend on the proposal, Zheng agrees to invite Yamada and several executives for a proper discussion. Gu claims the plan is still uncertain and suggests that only the 3 of them evaluate it before raising everyone's hopes. To make the private meeting appear harmless, he even invites Tang to accompany Zheng. Tang agrees because leaving her chairwoman alone with either man feels far more dangerous. Gu accepts with an awkward smile, relieved that both targets are now following his arrangement. While the trap takes shape upstairs, the seemingly empty office corridor remains quiet. Li Shuyang finishes clearing the latest zombies with one heavy swing of his new broadsword. Tianlei notices how quickly Li has adapted, while Cheng Yao barely recognizes the terrified fighter from yesterday. Li credits the weapon for his improvement and looks almost embarrassed by how much he already loves it. Cheng Yao finds the elevator and assumes they can ride directly toward the trap survivors. Tianlei refuses because the damaged electrical system could stop without warning and leave them sealed inside. The staircase is safer, although Cheng Yao worries about fighting through zombies on every single floor. Tianlei already has another route and confidently leads them away from both options. His enhanced hearing confirms the ventilation shaft ahead contains no zombies or suspicious movement. Elsewhere, Zheng, Tang, and Gu enter the private office where Yamada is waiting. Gu announces their arrival with the same professional tone he used before selling them out. Yamada's pleased expression confirms the meeting is proceeding exactly as planned. Zheng and Tang immediately feel uncomfortable, but neither yet understands how badly the situation has been arranged. Yamada welcomes them while lounging in luxury and receiving attention from both assistants. The display earns matching looks of disgust from Zheng and Tang. Zheng ignores the atmosphere and directly asks Yamada to explain his proposed escape plan. Caught without an actual proposal prepared, Yamada stalls and pretends to gather his thoughts. Tang notices the large pile of food sitting openly inside the office. She confronts Yamada because he previously claimed his luggage contained nothing to eat. Yamada casually changes his story and says he only discovered the supplies afterward. Tang reminds him that everyone is starving while Zheng has limited herself to almost nothing so the employees can eat. Zheng tries to end the argument and focus on escape, but Tang cannot overlook such deliberate selfishness. Yamada suddenly grabs Zheng and claims a leader should stop worrying about small rations and start thinking about larger opportunities. Tang rushes forward while Gu stands frozen between keeping his cover and protecting the chairwoman he betrayed. Zheng demands to know what Yamada is doing as his real intentions become impossible to hide. Yamada claims this is the private business he wanted to discuss and abandons every remaining trace of professionalism. Zheng screams and struggles as he forces her down onto the chair. Yamada tells her he has desired her since they first met and intends to exploit the chaos outside. Tang races toward them and orders Yamada to release Zheng immediately. Before she can reach the chair, Gu strikes Tang and knocks her away. Tong stares at him in disbelief and finally understands that Gu helped arrange the entire situation. Gu accuses both women of constantly uniting against him and ruining every plan he proposes. Years of resentment spill out as he complains that Jung commands him while Tong publicly undermines his authority. Yamada praises Gu for finally asserting himself, treating betrayal as some twisted display of courage. His assistants laugh together while the men congratulate themselves over trapping two defenseless coworkers. Jung calls desperately for anyone outside the office to help her. Yamada reveals that Gu already sent the employees into a distant meeting room under the excuse of discussing evacuation. The office is also soundproof, leaving Jung to believe nobody can hear her no matter how loudly she screams. Unfortunately for Yamada, 3 survivors are crawling through the ventilation shaft directly above his perfect hiding place. The cover collapses and drops Tianlei's entire group into the room, with Li Shuyang receiving most of the landing damage. From the floor, Tianlei takes one look at Jung's condition and immediately understands what they interrupted. Gu desperately restrains Tong while trying to process how 3 armed strangers just fell through the ceiling. Yamada pulls away from Jung as his assistants stare at the unexpected witnesses in complete embarrassment. Li initially mistakes the scene for something private and tries dragging Cheng Yao back out before they interfere further. Tianlei stops them because Jing's fear and Tong's struggle clearly show nobody agreed to what was happening. Tong begs the newcomers for help before Gu can silence her again. Yamada angrily demands their identities and orders them to leave his office. Tianlei remains calm, but his expression makes clear that Yamada no longer controls who stays or leaves. Li Shuyang explodes when Yamada insults their country and assumes foreign status gives him permission to abuse its people. He raises the broadsword and charges before Tianlei can decide on a quieter solution. Gui and Yamada's assistants scramble aside as Li's attack tears directly through their comfortable little arrangement. Yamada reveals surprising speed and counters with a powerful kick aimed at Li's head. Li plants his foot and adjusts his balance instead of being caught by the sudden change. Yamada settles into a trained stance, proving his confidence comes from more than arrogance. Li realizes the heavy foreign director has practiced martial arts and is far more capable than he appears. Tong reaches Jung and helps her stand while checking whether Yamada injured her. Yamada mocks Chinese martial arts and claims his karate is superior to anything Li could know. To prove it, he challenges Li to drop the sword and fight him fairly with empty hands. Li accepts immediately and discards the broadsword, refusing to let Yamada blame his defeat on a weapon. Yamada opens with a forceful kick intended to end the fight before Li can establish his rhythm. Li reads the attack early and moves inside its effective range. Yamada's momentum carries him off balance as Li redirects the strike toward the furniture. Li follows with a compact counter that stops Yamada from recovering his stance. Cheng Yao asks whether they should help, but Tianlei says interfering would only insult Li's decision to fight alone. Tianlei trusts his teammate and quietly watches for any threat outside the agreed duel. Li pressures Yamada with a rapid sequence that forces the larger man backward. When Yamada kicks again, Li blocks cleanly and counters through the opening. Humiliation replaces Yamada's earlier confidence, as he realizes Li can match both his power and technique. Yamada swings wildly, but Li catches the arm and breaks the attack before it develops. The two struggle for control until Li lowers his center of gravity and turns Yamada's weight against him. Yamada notices the throw too late and loses his footing completely. Li drives him through the glass table and ends the exchange with one decisive takedown. Yamada crashes among the shattered pieces with every ounce of confidence knocked out of him. Li stands over the defeated director and waits to see whether his opponent still wants to continue. One cold question is enough to erase whatever fight Yamada had left. Yamada immediately surrenders and begs Li to stop. Cheng Yao celebrates while Tianlei gives Li a calm nod of approval for controlling the entire fight. Li turns away, believing the defeated man has finally learned his lesson. Behind him, Yamada's trembling hand reaches toward a concealed weapon. He forces himself upright and abandons every rule he demanded only moments earlier. Tianlei spots the movement and shouts a warning before Li can be attacked from behind. Yamada lunges at Li with the hidden blade. Choosing treachery the instant a fair fight stops favoring him. Yamada ignores his surrender and lunges at Lu Shuyang from behind with the dagger he concealed. Li catches the movement at the last instant because Tianlei's warning gives him just enough time to react. He traps Yamada's wrist overhead and stops the blade before it can reach him. Li answers the betrayal with a direct punch that drops Yamada's remaining confidence immediately. The hidden weapon angers Li far more than losing would have because Yamada demanded fairness before cheating himself. Li tears the dagger away and drives Yamada onto the floor before he can attempt another surprise attack. Yamada crashes down hard and discovers that dishonesty has done nothing except make his defeat worse. The foreign director rolls across the room and finally loses the strength to keep fighting. Cheng Yao points out that Yamada ruined his own fair challenge by hiding a weapon until the end. Lee thanks Tianlei for spotting the attack, and admits he would have been caught without that warning. Tianlei tells him that honesty is admirable, but trusting every opponent's word will eventually get him killed. The noise finally draws the employees from the meeting room and sends them rushing toward the office. Gu Ping sees the crowd entering and realizes his quiet betrayal now has an entire audience. While Tong helps Jung cover herself and recover, Gu falls before his chairwoman and begins begging for mercy. He blames Yamada for manipulating him and promises that one convenient apology has completely repaired his character. Tong responds with a sharp slap because Gu willingly endangered the woman who trusted him most. She calls Gu by name and forces him to face exactly who he betrayed. Zhang repeatedly supported Gu and promoted him whenever possible, making his excuses even more pathetic. The betrayal leaves Zhang deeply hurt because she treated Gu as a trusted executive rather than a disposable employee. Once the staff learn what happened, they surround Gu and condemn him for selling out their chairwoman to Yamada. Several employees also turn their anger toward Yamada, whose influence over Gu no longer protects him from anyone. Tong asks Zhang how both men should be handled now that the immediate danger has passed. Zhang orders them tied up inside a utility room until legitimate rescuers can take responsibility for them. Gu keeps begging while Yamada protests that his foreign citizenship should somehow make him untouchable. Tianlei coldly reminds Yamada that the outbreak may have already destroyed the country he expects to protect him. Yamada's two assistants immediately cling to Tianlei and insist they had no part in their employer's actions. Chen Yao drags them away and demands to know why they are grabbing Tianlei so casually. Li Shuyang quietly asks whether both women came from Yamada's country and might still be working with him. Zhang decides caution is safer and orders the assistants restrained with the others. Tianlei reminds Zhang that she is not his superior and cannot simply issue commands to his group. Tong tries softening the disagreement by asking Tianlei to cooperate with his senior from the same college. Being called an older sister makes Zhang more offended than the refusal itself, and she demands that Tianlei repeat it. Her sudden closeness leaves both Tianlei and Li Shuyang awkwardly staring anywhere except directly ahead. The position makes Tianlei's attempt at a calm response much harder than it should be. Cheng Yao notices their wandering attention while Tong desperately asks Zhang to stop escalating the conversation. Once everyone settles down, Tianlei's group joins Zhang and Tong inside the meeting room. The employees whisper that their chairwoman hates being called an older sister and rarely loses her temper this badly. Tianlei argues that Zhang should appreciate the rescue instead of attacking the people who interrupted Yamada's plan. Zhang fires back that without their intervention she and Tong would have remained trapped with a dangerous man. Tianlei sarcastically asks whether she would have preferred them to remain inside the ceiling and mind their own business. Tong quickly offers Zhang water and explains that her chairwoman genuinely appreciates their help, despite the terrible delivery. She suggests everyone begin again with proper introductions before another misunderstanding starts a second fight. Tong introduces Zhang as the chairwoman of Tianxi Entertainment and identifies herself as Zhang's personal assistant. Cheng Yao recognizes Zhang's name and asks whether she graduated from Central China Business College. Zhang is surprised that a current student would know anything about her background. Cheng Yao praises Zhang as a successful graduate who built her own company and regularly offered internships to their college. Her admiration reaches full fan mode until Zhang mentions that Cheng Yao was one of her younger schoolmates. Tianlei interrupts by recalling how he applied for one of those internships during the previous summer. Although he met the requirements, the interviewer mocked his clothes and claimed a poor student belonged in delivery work instead. Zhang explains that professional appearance matters to a company, but admits the interviewer's insulting behavior was unacceptable. Li Shuyang wonders whether Tianlei meeting Zhang now is coincidence or the universe arranging an extremely awkward complaint session. Tong admits some company interviewers became arrogant and treated applicants according to money rather than ability. Tianlei says internships reserved for wealthy students should not be advertised as opportunities for struggling young people. Zhang accepts responsibility as chairwoman and sincerely apologizes to Tianlei and every student treated unfairly. The surrounding employees ask him to leave old workplace grievances behind because survival has become the urgent problem. They want to know why communication has failed and when the military will finally reach the building. Chen Yao looks toward Tianlei because his answer will destroy the hopeful assumptions keeping these people calm. Tianlei explains that zombies already control the surrounding streets and waiting passively for military rescue is unrealistic. No rescue teams appear during their entire journey from the college, leaving the employees terrified that nobody is coming. He also explains that the ventilation shaft is too narrow for the crowd, and the lower floors still contain numerous zombies. Zhang asks whether Tianlei truly sees no other route capable of moving everyone outside safely. Tianlei says another option may exist, but his exhausted group needs food and rest before attempting anything dangerous. He reminds Zhang that she currently needs their strength and suggests treating potential rescuers like actual guests. Tong quietly agrees and urges Jung to provide whatever hospitality the company still has available. Jang accepts and decides everyone should eat before continuing the escape discussion. Although some employees place complete faith in the students, Jo insists they must also search for solutions themselves. She orders Tong to locate the building plan so they can investigate service routes and overlooked exits. The hungry employees immediately ask whether any food remains now that military rescue is no longer their plan. Tong looks toward Jung because the honest answer may cause panic throughout the room. Jang finally prepares to admit that their supplies are nearly exhausted. Tong reveals that Jung already distributed her personal food and lied only to stop the employees from losing hope. Before panic spreads, one male employee returns carrying a bag and proudly announces that he found more supplies. He empties packaged food across the floor and instantly becomes the most popular person in the room. Jung recognizes the bag and asks why an ordinary employee has access to supplies that were stored elsewhere. The man admits he entered the office while Tianlei's group handled Yamada and secretly removed the bag. Tong accuses him of stealing from the very people who entered the building to help them. He argues that the variety of food proves the students probably collected it from abandoned places rather than purchasing it. Jang rejects that excuse because taking another survivor's supplies after receiving help is still disgraceful. The employee claims he inspected the building and believes the ventilation system is everyone's only possible escape route. Jung questions why he distrusts the students after personally witnessing how effectively they handled the zombies. He argues that if 3 students reach the upper floors alive, a larger group should also be capable of making the journey. The logic persuades several frightened employees and leaves Jung uncertain whether stopping them would only create more resentment. The man proposes eating first and leading several male employees downstairs to search for a safe path. A number of workers volunteer because waiting inside guarantees starvation while scouting at least offers a possibility. Tong recommends allowing the group to try since they can retreat if the lower route proves impossible. Jang studies the eager employee and senses that confidence alone does not make his plan trustworthy. She reluctantly grants permission but warns every volunteer to move carefully and return at the first sign of danger. The scouting group reaches the first floor lobby and finds it completely deserted. After removing the ventilation cover, Wang Zhen confirms the narrow shaft has delivered them safely downstairs. He climbs out first and cautiously checks the surrounding corridors for movement. Nothing approaches from either direction, making the building appear far safer than Tianlei described. The remaining employees crawl from the shaft and join Wang Zhen inside the lobby. One worker nearly kicks his colleague while escaping the cramped tunnel because both legs have gone numb. The others silence him and note that they encountered no zombies during the entire descent. Wang Zhen decides Jung was frightened by 3 students and exaggerated how dangerous the lower floors were. His followers laugh that women panic easily and claim they could have escaped much earlier. Wang Zhen's confidence pauses when his shoe sinks into a dark puddle. The strange liquid stretches across the floor and leads behind the reception counter. One employee leans over the desk to discover what caused the mess. A motionless zombie lies beside the counter with a deep injury across its head. The sight sends everyone backward until Wang Zhen orders them not to panic. Determined to preserve his authority, he approaches the body while the others warn him to stay careful. Wang Zhen recognizes the fire axe wound and concludes Zhao Tianlei already attacked this zombie. His followers remember that destroying the head is supposed to stop an infected person permanently. Seeing no movement, Wang Zhen begins examining the body with renewed confidence. A ring of master keys reveals that the infected man once controlled access throughout the building. The moment Wang Zhen takes them, the zombie's hand suddenly clamps around his sleeve. The supposedly dead creature awakens with a violent roar and lunges toward him. Wang Zhen tells the others to run, but fear leaves him standing directly in its path. He forces himself to stay calm by insisting that grown men should handle anything a student could defeat. Before fighting, Wang Zhen throws the master keys toward a colleague so they cannot be lost. The zombie charges while the scouting party scrambles away from its reach. Wang Zhen grabs a heavy decorative block and raises it with both hands. He brings the object down with every bit of strength he can gather. The blow knocks the zombie onto the floor but does not immediately calm Wang Zhen's fear. He continues striking until the creature finally stops moving. One employee cautiously confirms the zombie is dead before Wang Zhen attacks the flooring next. His followers celebrate and praise their boss as the one terrified victory made him a decorated commander. Wang Zhen accepts every compliment and claims zombies are harmless when someone understands their weakness. He promises that unity under his leadership will make surviving the apocalypse easy. Upstairs, Tianlei's group finishes checking every room and sealing the passages the company previously left exposed. Tianlei argues that careless leadership placed the entire workforce at risk long before supplies became a problem. Cheng Yao asks him not to judge Jung entirely through the internship rejection she never personally knew about. Tianlei explains that he abandoned 2 paying jobs to prepare for that interview and nearly lost his tuition money. His father took dangerous construction work to cover the shortage, then suffered a disabling fall while working overtime in heavy rain. No apology can fully erase that consequence simply because Jung was unaware of what her employees had done. Tianlei believes leaders must accept greater responsibility because one careless decision can reshape another person's entire life. Cheng Yao enthusiastically praises the answer, while Li Shuyang wonders when this hallway became a leadership seminar. She recalls a teacher saying true leaders unite people and earn loyalty rather than merely holding authority. Cheng Yao believes Tianlei has that ability and jokes that he may someday become important enough to forget her. Tianlei recognizes that her teasing hides a real fear of being left behind again. He gently pats her head and tells her not to imagine a future where he suddenly abandons her. Cheng Yao brightens and asks him to remember that they promised to remain together. Li Shuyang supports the promise while encouraging Tianlei to stop arguing with Jung over every small disagreement. The conversation ends when they enter the private office where their food bag was stored. Only an empty section of the table remains where the supplies should have been. Cheng Yao immediately asks who moved their bag while Tianlei studies the disturbed room. Elsewhere, Jung worries because Wang Zhen and the scouting party have been gone for almost 2 hours. Tianlei follows the missing supplies into the meeting room and concludes the bag must have been brought here. Discarded wrappers and crumbs quickly reveal what happened to most of their food. Li Shuyang accuses the employees of stealing while Cheng Yao asks why nobody simply requested something to eat. Tianlei gives Jung the chance to explain because her earlier choices suggest she would not take supplies without a reason. Jung's guilty silence confirms that the workers consumed food belonging to the people trying to rescue them. Li Shuyang condemns the employees for repaying help by taking the group's remaining provisions. Tong calls them simple snacks and claims the company merely borrowed them until everyone reaches safety. Li introduces himself properly before explaining that taking anything without permission is still theft. Tong stops the argument before Li's growing anger turns the meeting room into another fight. Zheng sincerely apologizes and promises the company will replace everything once Wang Zhen finds a route outside. Jianlei questions whether she honestly expects the scouting team to return. Their own descent took less than 30 minutes, so even a cautious round trip should require no more than 1 hour. Learning that Wang Zhen has already been absent for 2 hours confirms Tianlei's suspicion. Far below, the missing employees are comfortably eating noodles instead of searching for an exit. After days of hunger, the group enjoys a complete hot pot meal and thanks Wang Zhen for discovering it. One worker asks how their boss knew this hidden storage room contained both cooking equipment and food. Wang Zhen explains that models from the second-floor agency secretly kept meals here after becoming hungry from constant dieting. He had noticed the room during previous visits and recognized its key among those taken from the zombie. One employee suggests finishing quickly so they can return before Zheng becomes more worried. Wang Zhen argues that Tianqi no longer exists, meaning Zheng's old title should no longer control their decisions. He drops more meat into the pot and tells everyone to focus on the opportunity directly in front of them. With supplies available and a dangerous journey ahead, Wang Zhen says they should plan for their own futures first. One employee hesitates as he realizes the scouting mission has quietly become a rebellion against Zheng. Another mouthful of food makes the new arrangement much easier for him to accept. The workers declare Wang Zhen their leader and promise to follow whatever orders he gives. Wang Zhen assures them that former co-workers can become trusted partners as long as everyone remains loyal to him. He calls the apocalypse a fresh beginning where their unity can build a new order without answering to the old company. A nearby door suddenly clicks open and interrupts the speech. The group freezes at the unexpected sound while someone warns that a zombie may be inside. Wang Zhen dismisses the danger and claims zombies only look frightening because their movements are normally slow. He orders everyone to grab a weapon and aim directly for the head. Armed with boards and heavy objects, the 4 men gather behind Wang Zhen and prepare to fight. The door bursts open before any of them can establish a proper defense. A different zombie launches from the darkness with speed none of them believed possible. Its distorted face closes the distance before Wang Zhen can even raise his hands. The entire group realizes this creature is nothing like the slow zombie they defeated downstairs. Back in the conference room, Zheng Bingyan and Tong Yuxin can only wait as the employees who took the food remain missing. Tong Yuxin starts fearing the search team never made it back. Zhang Bingyan insists they may simply be lost inside the unfamiliar ventilation system. Zhao Tianlei shuts that hope down, since the ducts are simple and a delay this long almost certainly means zombies found them. When Tong Yuxin asks him to rescue them, Li Shuyang reminds her those same employees stole the group's food before disappearing. Tong argues that human lives matter more than supplies, while Li refuses to let guilt erase the choices that created this mess. Zhao finally says he can save them, but his sudden cooperation comes with a condition. He tells the stunned chairwoman to beg, because favors are no longer free in this world. Tong Yushin protests that Zheng has never lowered herself before anyone, which is exactly why Zhao refuses to back down. If Zheng truly values her employees, Zhao says sacrificing a little pride should be the easiest price she ever pays. Zheng swallows her anger and sincerely asks Zhao to help bring her people back. Zhao listens to the full plea, smiles, and calmly refuses anyway. For once, Zhong Bingyan has no response ready. Zhao reminds her that he warned the employees were too weak, yet she still let them steal supplies and search behind his back. Realizing he made her beg only to reject her, Zheng finally loses what remains of her patience. Zhao calls it a lesson rather than a negotiation. People like Zheng are used to making decisions from above, while ordinary people are the ones forced to absorb every bad consequence. Now that the old hierarchy has collapsed, Zhao tells her to adapt before reality teaches the same lesson far more brutally. He walks away while Zheng sends one last furious insult after him. Chen Yao follows and reminds Zhao that the missing workers are defenseless office employees who cannot outrun a group of zombies. Zhao admits he mainly wanted Zheng to understand how her arrogance affects everyone below her, not to leave the workers to die. Since Chen Yao asks him sincerely, he agrees to help, earning another sudden kiss before he can finish acting difficult. Zhao is left touching his cheek while Li Shuyang watches the whole exchange with absolutely no idea where to look. Chen Yao calls it simple gratitude, though her smile makes that explanation sound conveniently incomplete. Zhao says it was not a serious promise, but Cheng will remember that he changed his decision for her. Her happiness leaves Zhao too embarrassed to argue any further. Li Shuyang offers to join the search, but Zhao orders him to stay and protect the women gathered on this floor. Before leaving, Zhao tells Cheng Yao to follow Li Shuyang immediately if any zombies break into the conference area. Cheng promises to stay safe and sends him off with the same warning. Zhao gives them one final signal and heads downstairs alone. The lower floor is silent enough that every small movement feels suspicious. An open ventilation grate confirms the missing employees climbed out here, so Zhao starts tracing where they went next. With little space to hide on the floor, he grips his axe and searches the nearby rooms. A heavy smell of blood leads him toward one closed storage room. Zhao eases the door open and steps between stacks of boxes. The room looks still, but his instincts warn him that something inside is watching. A wet sputtering sound draws his attention toward the ceiling. Before he can identify it, something crashes through the boxes and exposes the back of the room. There he finds 3 missing employees collapsed together, confirming the search team never escaped this floor. The condition of the bodies tells Zhao the attackers struck too quickly for any of them to defend themselves. A rush of movement cuts through the silence directly over his head. Zhao dives aside, grabs his axe, and turns before the attacker can land cleanly. The creature that drops in front of him moves nothing like the slow zombies he has fought so far. Its speed and awareness reveal a mutated zombie, turning a rescue search into Zhao's first real test against an evolved threat. The creature's opening rush instantly proves it moves far faster than every ordinary zombie Zhao has encountered. Its glowing red eyes confirm this is not another slow infected wandering on instinct alone. Zhao remembers that zombies eventually evolve as they consume energy, gaining strength, speed, and more dangerous physical abilities. Compared with ordinary zombies, these mutated variants become one of the greatest threats remaining survivors will face. That makes this creature Zhao's first direct encounter with an evolved zombie. Instead of retreating, Zhao tightens his grip on the axe and decides to test exactly what the mutation gave it. The zombie answers by launching a sweeping kick with enough speed to catch Zhao completely off guard. Several attacks follow almost together, forcing Zhao to dodge before he can properly reset his stance. He avoids the first exchange, but the creature is already closing in again. Unlike ordinary infected, this one opens its jaws while deliberately aiming for Zhao's upper body. Zhao barely blocks the bite with his axe before the creature's momentum drives him backward. Constantly defending will exhaust him, so Zhao needs to break away and create enough distance for a decisive swing. He plants one foot hard and changes direction before the zombie can press closer. Using the creature's momentum, Zhao flips out of its reach and finally separates them. The landing gives him enough room to rebuild his stance and prepare a counterattack. Zhao charges before the zombie can recover, betting everything on one clean strike. The creature reads the axe's path and leaps over it with disturbingly sharp timing. Zhao redirects the missed swing across the floor, but the zombie avoids the blade again. Its reactions are far more sensitive than before, meaning a simple direct attack will never connect. The zombie circles him at full speed, searching for another opening while staying beyond the axe's reach. It suddenly slips around Zhao's guard and attacks from the side. Those glowing eyes remain fixed on every movement Zhao makes. When Zhao disappears behind the surrounding shelves, the creature pauses because it can no longer track him. Unable to locate its target, the zombie starts tearing through boxes and searching the room by force. A faint movement behind it finally draws the creature's attention upward. The zombie roars and charges the shelves, convinced it has cornered Zhao. Zhao has already climbed above it and waited patiently for the creature to expose itself. The mutation gave this thing incredible speed, but planning apparently never arrived with the upgrade. Zhao drops from above and uses his full weight to trap the zombie before it can escape. The creature finally realizes the missing target has been directly over its head. Zhao's finishing strike lands before its speed can save it again. He keeps the creature pinned until its body stops resisting. Raw speed made the zombie dangerous, but its predictable thinking gave Zhao the opening he needed. While examining the fallen mutant, Zhao notices a small white crystal hidden inside its head. The system identifies it as Zhao's first crystal nucleus and reveals that it can unlock several new functions. Zhao nearly jumps out of his skin before complaining that the system still enters conversations without warning. The system explains that crystal nuclei only form inside mutated zombies, while ordinary infected never develop them. Their colors rise from white toward black, and each nucleus can improve attributes, provide experience, or unlock system resources. Since this one is white, Zhao confirms the creature was only a low-level mutation. That detail takes a moment to sink in. Zhao panics at the thought that the weakest evolved zombie already pushed him this hard. The system reassures him that evolution requires large amounts of energy and increasingly long periods of development. Its records even show that fewer than 10 zombies worldwide ever reach the highest black crystal stage. With the extinction level panic handled, the system finally asks how Zhao wants to use his new nucleus. Zhao can earn experience by killing ordinary zombies, so spending this rare nucleus on a few points would be wasteful. He chooses to sacrifice it and activate the resource exchange instead. The white crystal dissolves as the hidden exchange function begins opening. A wave of light expands through Zhao's virtual space while the new interface loads. The completed virtual mall appears before him, giving Zhao access to an entirely new supply system. The virtual mall separates everything into weapon and supply sections, with entire catalogs waiting behind the new interface. Zhao taps through the options and quickly discovers that most of the interesting equipment remains locked. The white crystal only unlocked level 1 exchange access, while actual purchases still require experience and stronger crystals unlock higher item tiers. The system reminds Zhao that the nucleus opened the store rather than giving him free access to everything inside. Annoyed by the fine print, Zhao closes the mall without buying anything. The system disappears immediately, leaving Zhao complaining that his virtual assistant has mastered the art of ending conversations first. Once the interface fades, Zhao notices the food and water scattered throughout the storage room. The surviving supplies include enough packaged food and bottled water to provide the group with a proper meal. He decides to carry everything upstairs so Chang Yao and the others can finally eat something decent. Zhao fills his backpack and begins returning to the conference floor. When he reaches the executive area, the normally crowded room is strangely quiet. Zhao calls for Chang Yao and Li Shuyang, but neither one answers him. A distant cry for help cuts through the silence, and Zhao immediately recognizes the voice. Fearing that zombies broke inside, he races down the hallway toward the conference room. Zhao throws the doors open without slowing down. The scene waiting inside stops him cold. Li Shuyang is holding an injured Chang Yao and desperately trying to keep her conscious. Across the room, Teng Yuxin orders the attackers to release Zheng Bingyan before Zhao returns. Li Shuyang wants to fight them directly, but attacking would place Zheng in immediate danger. Yamada keeps a blade against Zheng and threatens her life if anyone takes another step. Zhao rushes to Chang Yao and demands to know how everything collapsed during his brief absence. Li Shuyang blames himself for failing to protect her after Zhao trusted him with that responsibility. Tong explains that Yamada and Gu Weiping escaped their restraints, created a distraction, and seized Zheng while everyone was separated. Chang Yao tried to protect Zheng during the escape and was stabbed before Li Shuyang could reach her. Barely able to speak, Chang Yao apologizes to Zhao. She remembers promising to behave and wait for his return, yet believes she failed him. Zhao assures her that he is back now and refuses to let her blame herself. Zheng apologizes as well, knowing Chang Yao was hurt because she tried to save her. Zhao cuts the apology short because hearing regret cannot undo what happened. His anger turns toward the decision to leave 2 dangerous prisoners restrained without anyone guarding them. Zheng accepts the criticism, but insists arguing over blame will not help Chang Yao now. Chang Yao explains that Zheng was only captured because she stepped forward to protect the other frightened employees. Even now, Cheng wants Zhao to understand that Zheng is a better leader than he believed. Her strength begins fading before she can say anything more. Zhao tells her to conserve her energy while he desperately tries to stop the bleeding. Chang Yao refuses because there is something she has always wanted him to know. She admits that when they first met, she never truly liked Zhao, and only saw him as a way to survive. After the terror inside the library, Cheng was frightened and attached herself to the first person capable of keeping her safe. Over time that fear became genuine affection, though she always knew Zhao's heart belonged more deeply to someone else. She was content remaining beside him as a teammate, but now realizes she cannot continue that journey. Chang tells Zhao that other people will care for him even after she is gone. Her only request is that he save one small place for her in his memory. Zhao promises he could never forget her and begs Chang to keep holding on. Their hands remain together as her remaining strength slips away. Chang says she is happy they met, and her voice finally falls silent. Zhao stares at her in disbelief as the truth reaches him. Li Shuyang breaks down because he knows Cheng Yao is no longer responding. Zhao holds her close and calls her name, refusing to accept that she is gone. Tong Yuxin watches helplessly as the entire room falls silent around them. Yamada shows no remorse and coldly treats Cheng Yao's death as though another woman could simply replace her. He offers Zhang in exchange for safe passage, but the cruelty of that proposal only turns Zhao's grief into fury. Cheng Yao lies motionless while Zhao keeps holding her hand, unable to accept that her final words are already behind him. When Zhao finally stands, Li Shuyang immediately feels the grief around him hardening into something far more dangerous. Zhao blames his own carelessness for leaving Cheng exposed to men he already knew could not be trusted. Yamada and Gue Maiping realize the quiet man approaching them is no longer thinking about negotiation. Zhao walks straight toward Zhang Bingyan despite the blade being held against her. The complete absence of fear leaves both captors uncertain about what he intends to do. Yamada tightens his hold on Zhang and tries using her life to force Zhao back. Zhao coldly refuses to play along because pleading would only give them control over another person he cares about. Knowing Cheng was injured while protecting her, Zhang tells Zhao not to sacrifice anyone else for her sake. Yamada insists the threat is real, but Zhao tells him to stop talking and make his decision. For the first time, the hostage-taker understands that Zhao may genuinely advance no matter what happens. Zhao continues applying pressure until fear makes Yamada hesitate at the exact moment he needs. The instant Yamada's attention slips, Zhao crosses the room before either man can react. One direct blow breaks Yamada's control over Zhang and knocks the weapon away from her neck. Zhao catches Zhang while restraining Yamada's arm, completing the rescue in one continuous movement. Once freed, Zhang moves toward Tong Yuxin while everyone checks that she escaped unharmed. Gue Bing tries exploiting Zhao's exposed back by raising a chair for a surprise attack. Zhao intercepts him without releasing control of the situation and redirects the attack away from the others. Gu is thrown across the room and crashes through the nearby office furniture. Zhao follows by driving Yamada down as well, leaving both captors separated and unable to coordinate. With the hostages safe, Zhao finally gives the two men his full attention. Yamada sees nothing in Zhao's expression that suggests mercy is still available. Zhao forces Yamada's grip open and removes the dagger that started this entire tragedy. He catches the weapon and turns toward both men with a single question remaining. Zhao demands to know which one of them killed Cheng Yao. Neither man answers quickly enough, so Zhao makes it clear that silence will not protect them. Gu immediately blames Yamada and claims the dagger proves he was responsible. Yamada panics as Zhao uses the weapon to pressure an answer from him. Gu continues ordering Yamada to confess, hoping desperation will make the false story believable. He claims Yamada seized the dagger during the struggle and accidentally struck Cheng when she resisted. Zhang exposes the lie and identifies Gu Weiping as the person who actually attacked Cheng Yao. The last restraint in Zhao's expression disappears once the truth is confirmed. Gu abandons the lie and insists he only meant to frighten Cheng before the struggle went wrong. He drops to the floor and begs Zhao to spare him because they come from the same country. Zhao reminds Gu that Cheng had a family waiting for her return, yet he ended that hope to save himself. He promises not to kill Gu because an immediate death would end the punishment far too quickly. Instead, Zhao grabs him and says he has found a much better use for him. Gu's protest echoes through the corridor as Zhao drags him away from the conference room. Li Shuyang and the others follow behind, while Gu repeatedly demands to know where he is being taken. Zhao stops beside the exterior windows and studies the streets surrounding the building. Without explaining himself, he strikes the emergency fire alarm. The building siren activates at full volume. Its sound travels to every floor and carries far into the streets outside. Zhang and Tung cover their ears while demanding to know why Zhao would attract so much attention. Zhao asks the group to trust him long enough to see what the alarm reveals. He orders everyone to watch closely and learn exactly how many zombies are trapped inside and gathering outside the building. The fire alarm draws every nearby zombie toward the building and sends the infected inside rushing toward the noise. Several zombies reach the glass entrance while the survivors watch the crowd rapidly grow outside. Gu Weiping panics and demands that everyone leave before the doors give way. Several employees recognize Wang and Zhao among the infected, confirming that the missing search group never escaped. The two former employees now stand at the front of the approaching horde. Zhang Bingyan realizes the people she allowed downstairs have already been lost. Before Gu understands Zhao's plan, Zhao forces him through the entrance and into the zombies' path. Gu falls outside and immediately reaches back toward the safety behind him. Zhao closes the glass door before Gu can scramble inside again. Gu pounds against the entrance and begs Zhao not to abandon him. Zhao says Chang Yao's final pain was brief, while the fear of approaching death can last far longer. A bitten person does not always transform immediately, meaning Gu may remain aware throughout the process. Surrounded with nowhere to run, Gu is forced to experience every moment of that terror. The zombies overwhelm him while Zhao leaves him with the consequences of killing Chang Yao. Everyone watching is shaken by the cold punishment unfolding beyond the glass. Gu uses his final chance to call Zhao an evil monster, but Zhao shows no regret. Li Shuyang asks whether Yamada should receive the same punishment for helping God. Yamada immediately protests and tries distancing himself from Chen Yao's death. Zhao refuses to dispose of him so quickly because Yamada may still prove useful. He orders Li Shuyang to restrain Yamada securely and keep him imprisoned for later. With the immediate danger handled, Zheng approaches Zhao and struggles to find the right words. She tries to apologize for the decisions that placed Cheng Yao in danger. Zhao stops her before she can finish because he cannot accept an apology right now. Tong Yushin watches Zheng absorb the rejection without attempting to defend herself. Zhao knows Chang believed Zheng was worth protecting, but that knowledge only makes the loss harder to face. He walks away before his grief turns the conversation into something even more painful. The surviving employees gather inside the manager's room to decide what remains of their future. Fear spreads through the group as everyone realizes their strongest protectors have separated from them. Joan sits silently, while Tong remains beside her and waits for her to regain control. One employee assumes the missing workers will never return and asks what they should do next. Another points out that the building is surrounded and filled with zombies, leaving them with no obvious escape route. Zheng tells them to stop calling her chairwoman because she no longer believes she deserves the title. She blames herself for approving the search that cost several employees their lives, though the others insist they chose to go. Admitting that fear made her act too quickly, Zheng promises to protect every remaining member of Tianqi Entertainment. She refuses to let another employee die because of one of her decisions. Elsewhere, the manager's office remains painfully quiet beneath the bright ceiling lights. Zhao sits alone beside Cheng Yao's body, with none of his earlier anger left to distract him. He asks why someone who usually protected herself chose to risk everything this time. During every previous danger, Cheng stayed behind him, making her final impulsive choice even harder to understand. Zhao cannot understand what Zheng meant to her or why saving that woman was worth her life. With no answer coming, he remains beside Cheng and lowers his head in silence. A quiet knock interrupts the room, but Zhao does not respond. Zheng slowly opens the door and enters despite knowing he does not want company. She explains that Cheng died protecting her, so she came to offer a final goodbye. Zhao orders Zheng to leave because looking at her only reminds him why Cheng is gone. Zheng accepts the blame and admits that Cheng would still be alive if she had not been captured. Even so, she begs Zhao to save the innocent employees who now have nobody else capable of leading them out. Zhao asks whether blaming or punishing her could ever bring Cheng Yao back. That answer leaves Zheng fighting tears because she knows nothing she offers can repair his loss. She finally tells Zhao to take his anger out on her however he needs, as long as he agrees to protect her people. Zheng remembers that Cheng Yao loved fashionable clothes and had been saving for a Chanel skirt she never got to buy. She believes Cheng would want to leave this world wearing something from the brand she loved most. Zhao notices Zheng's skirt comes from that exact brand and tells her to give it to Cheng. The unexpected request leaves Zheng unsure how to respond. Zhao reminds her that she offered him anything to save her employees, yet she is already hesitating over one piece of clothing. Embarrassed but determined to honor her promise, Zheng agrees to change elsewhere and bring the skirt back. Zhao stops her and demands that she remove it in the room. Zheng realizes he is deliberately attacking the dignity she has spent her entire life protecting. He asks whether saving her employees only mattered while the personal costs remain comfortable. Zhao accuses successful elites of believing their status excuses every selfish decision they make. Once their own interests are threatened, he says responsibility and other people's lives suddenly become disposable. He cannot understand why Cheng admired someone who appears to value pride more than the people depending on her. Zheng admits her dignity matters because she built her career without submitting herself to anyone. However, protecting her remaining employees now matters more than preserving that pride. She accepts the humiliation because she wants to prove she is not the selfish leader Zhao believes her to be. Zheng reminds Zhao that he also made a promise to save her people. With that goal in mind, she begins following through on the uncomfortable bargain. Zhao watches silently as her determination forces him to reconsider the judgment he made so quickly. Zheng's hands shake, but she continues because backing down would mean placing herself above everyone waiting outside. Before she goes any further, Zhao tells her to stop and leave. Relief and wounded pride mix together as Zheng struggles to understand his sudden change. Zhao admits that humiliating her cannot bring Cheng back, no matter how many times he does it. Unable to answer, Jung turns away while quietly wiping her tears. Before she exits, Zhao orders her employees to gather in the meeting room within half an hour because he will escort them out. Jung can hardly believe he has agreed to help after everything he just said. Zhao explains that Chang sacrificed herself to protect Chang, so abandoning the people she died for would make that sacrifice meaningless. Still consumed by grief, he tells Jung to leave before he changes his mind. Jung finally understands that his cruelty came from pain rather than genuine hatred. Once the door closes, Zhao was left alone with Chang again. He admits that beneath her jokes and smiles, Chang always feared becoming useless and being left behind. What she never understood was how important her presence had already become to him. Even with the super upgrade system supporting him, Zhao still feels terrified and uncertain about surviving this apocalypse. Chang was the person who encouraged him, gave him courage, and made him believe he could keep moving forward. Zhao carefully lifts her from the couch and carries her across the room. Every step makes the finality of losing her harder to ignore. After laying Chang down gently, Zhao promises that he will continue the journey they began together. He prepares a respectful cremation so her remains will never be abandoned to the zombies. Zhao ignites the fuel and watches the flames begin to spread. The small flame quickly grows until there is no longer any way to delay their goodbye. Chang's peaceful figure disappears beneath the fire as Zhao silently honors her final rest. He remains beside the flames until his grief finally settles into determination. Zhao promises to carry Chang in his heart and never allow her memory to disappear. Half an hour later, the survivors gather inside the meeting room as instructed. Jung asks Zhao to confirm that he truly has a way to lead everyone out of the building. Li Shuyang points out that the earlier alarm gathered even more zombies around them, making their position worse than before. Zhao says their escape will depend on using the one man they still have available. That statement immediately draws everyone's attention toward the restrained Yamada. Zhao grabs the prisoner while Yamada protests that nobody there has the right to decide his fate. Zhao calmly explains that he has no intention of killing Yamada because he needs him outside. Patting his shoulder, Zhao tells Yamada to prepare for the important performance waiting for him. With the corridors packed with zombies, Zhao leads the survivors to the building's ventilation system. The employees crawl single file through the narrow duct because separating now would leave someone trapped behind. Zhao stays near the front, while Li Suyang helps keep the frightened group moving at the same pace. Yamada's hands remain tied, and the rope gives Zhao complete control over where the prisoner goes. Yamada's assistants Aoi and Ozawa follow at the rear, struggling to avoid falling behind everyone else. Li questions why they are risking the entire group to bring two women who previously followed Yamada. Zhao argues that Aoi and Ozawa never attacked anyone, and abandoning them upstairs would still be a death sentence. Beneath the ventilation grates, dozens of zombies continue wandering through the illuminated offices. Tong Yushin admits she is terrified, while Jung promises that whatever happens they will face it together. Upon reaching the chosen opening, Zhao turns toward Yamada and quietly wishes him good luck. Understanding that he is about to become the distraction, Yamada begs Zhao to release him. Zhao opens the grate and lowers the restrained prisoner through the ceiling before Yamada can resist. The sudden movement immediately catches the attention of every zombie gathered below. Yamada swings helplessly above the horde, while the rope keeps him barely beyond their reach. His screams spread through the building and draw even more infected toward the same location. Within seconds, the surrounding zombies abandon the corridors and crowd directly beneath him. Once the route is clear, Zhao orders everyone forward while Yamada's noise keeps the infected distracted. The remaining women rush through the duct before the zombies can lose interest in their hanging target. Zhao reaches the next opening first and quietly drops onto the empty floor. He and Li help the others down before sending everyone running toward the nearest exit. Several employees reach the glass doors and desperately try forcing them open. A fallen vending machine has jammed the entrance from the opposite side, making the obvious escape route useless. Zhao realizes that even his strength cannot clear the obstruction quickly enough with zombies approaching. Zhang remembers an internal passage connected to the bank and directs the group toward its separate exit. Back beneath the ventilation opening, the zombies begin reaching high enough to catch Yamada's legs. Yamada cries for help as the rope becomes the only thing keeping him above them. Aoi and Ozawa hear his voice from inside the duct and return instead of escaping with the others. Yamada spots them above and begs both women to pull him back to safety. Despite everything he has done, Aoi and Ozawa grab the rope and use their combined strength to lift him. The two women continue pulling until Yamada finally reaches the ventilation opening. Once safely inside, he embraces them and acts grateful for their loyalty. Yamada promises to care for their families, but his expression reveals that the words are really a farewell. He suddenly throws both women from the opening before either one can protect herself. Aoi and Ozawa land among the zombies while calling Yamada's name in disbelief. Yamada admits he only needed them as another distraction and considers their sacrifice something they owed him. With the infected occupied below, he crawls deeper into the ventilation system and leaves them behind. Meanwhile, the bank lobby appears deserted when Zhao's group reaches the other side of the building. Zhang leads everyone across the open floor because the external exit is now directly ahead. A sudden burst of gunfire strikes the glass before anyone can reach the doors. An armored cash transport crashes into the lobby with Yamada standing inside and holding a shotgun. He proudly reveals that he survived the trap by crawling through the vents and reaching the bank first. The abandoned armored vehicle and weapon were left behind when the bank's security team fled during the outbreak. Now protected inside the heavy truck, Yamada threatens to drive straight through Zhao and everyone beside him. His confidence grows as he raises the shotgun and prepares to attack from behind the vehicle's protection. Yamada begins firing wildly across the lobby without caring who gets caught in his path. Zhao pulls Zhang down while Li and the others dive aside to avoid the incoming shots. The blasts tear across the room and knock several nearby zombies off their feet. Still laughing, Yamada points the shotgun toward the survivors and threatens to leave them as food for the remaining horde. Yamada continues firing from the armored truck, determined to eliminate everyone before they can escape. Repeated blasts tear through the bank lobby and send fragments flying across the empty counters. The survivors dive in different directions as Yamada sweeps the room without caring who gets caught. Zhao pulls Zheng Bingyan behind cover and keeps her low while searching for Yamada's next angle. Tong Yuxin loses her balance during the scramble and falls onto the exposed floor. Zheng sees her collapse and immediately calls out in panic. Yamada laughs from inside the truck while continuing to fire around the terrified secretary. Li Shuyang grabs a heavy desk and pushes it forward as a makeshift shield. The desk absorbs the incoming barrage long enough for Li to cross the open lobby. Zhao keeps Zheng behind him and drags her toward a position beyond Yamada's current line of fire. Li reaches Tong Yuxin, lifts her from the floor, and carries her back behind cover. Once everyone regroups, they quickly check whether the shots manage to hit her. Li asks if she is injured, but Tong can barely answer through the shock. Relief finally reaches her when she realizes she escaped without a wound. Tong breaks down and clings to Li because she genuinely believes she was about to die. Her sudden embrace leaves Li embarrassed, though he is mostly relieved that she is safe. Another burst reaches Susan and Yue before the two employees can find proper cover. Zheng calls their names as both women fall and stop responding. Zhao pulls Zheng away because stepping into the open now would only give Yamada another target. Yamada keeps firing and mocks Zhao for hiding despite all the strength he displayed earlier. Li points out that they cannot remain trapped behind the counters forever. Zhao knows the noise and scent of blood will soon attract more zombies, leaving them little time to act. He studies the armored vehicle, Yamada's weapon, and every remaining piece of cover before choosing a plan. With ordinary options running out, Zhao secretly opens the exchange system. The virtual catalog appears as he searches through every weapon and useful supply currently available. Zhao attempts to exchange for a rifle, but the system rejects him because his level remains too low. Even during an emergency, the system refuses to bend its requirements or give him anything on credit. Everyone nearby watches Zhao argue with empty air and wonders whether the pressure has finally reached him. Just before closing the menu, Zhao notices that a container of gasoline is available at his current level. He tells everyone to remain hidden and not leave their cover until he gives the signal. Zhao quietly explains the important part of his plan to Li Shuyang. Li understands immediately and moves into position while Yamada remains focused on the truck. Yamada accelerates to the lobby, believing the armored vehicle can crush anything Zhao places before him. Li steps into view and insults Yamada loudly enough to draw his complete attention. He challenges Yamada to stop hiding inside the armored shell and face him directly. Yamada takes the bait and decides running Li down will be far more satisfying than shooting him. He turns the vehicle sharply and lines the truck up with Li's position. The armored vehicle charges forward, but Li waits until the final moment before diving safely aside. As the truck passes beneath him, Zhao lands on its roof with enough force to alert Yamada. Yamada claims he expected this tactic and believes Zhao has placed himself exactly where he wanted. He raises the shotgun toward Zhao and threatens to finish him at close range. Yamada pulls the trigger before Zhao appears to have any room left to escape. Still protected by the truck, Yamada mockingly apologizes as though the result has already been decided. Zhao calmly tells him that the only plan being destroyed tonight will be Yamada's. Yamada finally notices the gasoline Zhao positioned near the vehicle, but the realization comes too late. The blast strikes the container and ignites the fuel surrounding the armored truck. A massive explosion erupts through the lobby and completely engulfs Yamada's stolen vehicle. Zhao shields his face from the heat and debris as his improvised plan finally silences Yamada's attack. The gasoline erupts around the armored truck, forcing Zhao to shield himself from the blast. Li Shuyang ducks behind cover while Zhong Bingyan and Tong Yuxin hold on to each other through the impact. Smoke and dust spread across the bank lobby as the explosion finally dies down. Li cautiously looks toward the wreckage once the heat begins fading. Yamada's armored vehicle lies burning in the center of the destroyed lobby. The man who believed the truck made him untouchable is finally silenced inside his own protection. Zhao feels no sympathy after everything Yamada did to Chang Yao and the women who trusted him. Lee admits that defeating someone protected by an armored truck and shotgun would have been nearly impossible without Zhao's plan. When Lee asks where the gasoline came from, Zhao dismisses it as another mysterious reward he happened to receive. Nearby, Susan and Yu remain motionless after being caught in Yamada's earlier attack. Their loss leaves Jung and Tung wondering whether they are the only Tianxi Entertainment employees still alive. A sudden sound from behind them interrupts that painful thought. Xiao He slowly rises from the floor, shaken but unharmed after hiding through the firefight. Relief overwhelms her when she sees Zheng Bingyan and Tong Yuxin standing safely nearby. Xiao He embraces Tong and admits she believes she would never see either of them again. Zhao cuts the reunion short because the explosion will soon draw every nearby zombie toward the bank. Outside, the streets remain temporarily clear, but smoke rising from the building makes their position impossible to hide. Zhao reaches an abandoned cargo truck and turns the ignition before trusting it as their escape vehicle. The engine starts successfully, giving the survivors the transportation they desperately need. Cao He asks Zheng where they can possibly go now that their workplace and old lives are gone. Zheng tells her to forget formal titles, while Li invites all three women to travel with their group. Zhao immediately questions when Li gained permission to start recruiting survivors on his behalf. Li points toward the ruined streets and argues that abandoning three defenseless women would amount to leaving them to die. He reminds Zhao that Cheng Yao would never have walked away from people who still needed help. Hearing her name removes Zhao's remaining desire to argue. Zheng, Tung, and Xiaohe wait quietly while Zhao considers what Cheng would have chosen. He finally gives Li an annoyed agreement and accepts the three women into the group. Li immediately tells them to stop wasting time and climb into the truck. Xiaohe guides Xiong forward while Tong follows behind them. Li watches the three women approach and looks very satisfied with the result of his argument. Tong returns his smile, clearly remembering that Li risked himself to carry her away from Yamada's gunfire. By nightfall, the cargo truck is moving beyond the city with its new group of survivors safely inside. The passengers settle into the empty cargo compartment, while Zhao handles the road ahead. With immediate danger behind them, the women finally have enough breathing room to learn about their new companions. Tong begins by asking Li Shuyang about Zhao Tianlei, Cheng Yao, and how the two men started traveling together. She also points out that Li hardly looks like another college student following Zhao around. Li explains that he worked as a martial arts instructor before the outbreak and never attended their university. Tong says that only makes him more impressive because he is strong, loyal, and willing to protect people weaker than himself. She moves closer and continues questioning him while Li becomes increasingly aware of how little space remains between them. Li explains that he and his younger sister were trapped inside a supermarket when the apocalypse began. After his sister died, Zhao saved Li and helped him lay her to rest, so Li chose to treat him as an older brother. Tong admits she never expected someone with Li's intimidating appearance to care so deeply about friendship and family. The conversation shifts toward Cheng Yao, though Li explains that she and Zhao never officially became a couple. Zhao had always been focused on Shen Xinyu, the famous student he admired before the outbreak. Tong jokes that Zheng has no romantic chance against Zhao's longtime crush, immediately earning an embarrassed protest from her chairwoman. After finishing Zhao's relationship history, Tong turns the same question back onto Li. Li admits that his former girlfriend recently left him, meaning he is currently single. Tong solves that problem immediately by placing an arm around him and declaring herself his girlfriend from now on. Yu Qin tells Li Suyang she likes him and has already decided he will be her boyfriend, leaving him too stunned to argue. Li Zhuyang insists rescuing her was basic kindness, but Yu Xing claims a hero who wins a woman's heart should take responsibility for it. She corners him with a simple choice and asks whether he truly refuses to date her. When Li hesitates, Yu Xing demands to know what about her could possibly make her unworthy of him. Faced with that loaded question, Li Suyang produces nothing except nervous sweating and half a syllable. Yu Qin counts his silence as consent, links arms with him, and announces their new relationship to Bingyan and Shen Xinyu. She even orders her friends to punish him if he ever betrays her, while Li wonders when his rescue mission became a marriage contract. Bingyan and Shen Xinyu accept the announcement, though Bingyan clearly has questions about how quickly this happened. The truck finally brakes at an unfinished construction site far from the crowded city. Zhao Tianlei decides they will stay there overnight and resume traveling once daylight returns. Everyone climbs out of the container, relieved to trade the cramped ride for solid ground. Yuxin studies the empty surroundings and asks whether they have reached the suburbs. Moonlight reveals a massive development zone filled with cranes, materials, and half-built towers. Bingyan explains that the government funded the park to relocate research institutions away from the expensive city center. Since construction never finished, the area should have few workers, few residents, and hopefully even fewer infected. Zhao spots a completed canteen and chooses it as their shelter for the night. He adds that anyone too delicate for the arrangement can find another room, clearly aiming that comment at Bingyan. Bingyan immediately takes offense at being treated like the group's fragile rich lady. She grabs Shen Xinyu and follows anyway, insisting she can handle the same conditions as everyone else. Inside, the canteen is dark but intact, with enough tables and kitchen equipment to support the whole group. Li Shuyang checks the storage and happily discovers fresh vegetables that have not spoiled yet. With ingredients secured, he asks the women which of them actually knows how to cook. Yusin and Bingyan decline instantly, leaving Shen Xinyu as the only person who does not shake her head. Shen Xinyu admits she knows a little, though she worries her cooking may not satisfy everyone. Zhao tells her taste is secondary tonight because the real goal is simply getting everyone fed. His direct request catches Shen Xinyu off guard, but she blushes and agrees to handle dinner. She heads deeper into the canteen to search for rice, noodles, canned food, or anything that can turn vegetables into a proper meal. While the women gather supplies, Li Shuyang drops an iced beer beside Zhao and suggests they finally relax. Zhao refuses because drinking would lower their guard, but Li argues one can of beer will not make either of them useless. Li demonstrates his confidence by taking a long drink before Zhao can object again. The cold beer immediately improves his mood, proving his survival priorities still include refreshments. Watching him enjoy it makes Zhao reconsider despite knowing this is hardly the safest time for a drinking break. Zhao finally accepts one can and promises himself it will only be a small amount. The two men toast to surviving another day while keeping the celebration quiet enough not to attract trouble. Across the kitchen, Yushin invites Bingyan to help wash vegetables while Shen Xinyu searches for the main ingredients. Working side by side gives the two friends a rare moment to talk without the men listening. As they clean the produce, Bingyan quietly returns to Yushin's sudden decision about Li Shuyang. She asks whether Yushin genuinely intends to become the girlfriend of a man she only just met. Yushin admits Li is neither wealthy nor socially impressive, but his kindness matters more to her now than the qualities she once chased. Bingyan understands the logic, yet the seriousness behind her friend's answer makes the conversation feel much heavier. Yushin finally confesses that romance is not her main reason because she wants someone dependable enough to protect her. She still remembers being too frightened to resist when Yamada and Gu Weiping bullied them, leaving both women helpless. The collapse of law has convinced Yushin that being alone leaves her vulnerable, and she refuses to experience that powerlessness again. Li Shuyang may never truly fall for her, but Yushin trusts that an honest man like him will keep her safe without deliberately hurting her. Bingyan falls silent when Yushin turns the conversation toward her and calls her by name. Yushin warns Bingyan that she also needs to think ahead about who she can rely on, catching her completely unprepared. Yushin warns Bingyan that Zhao may have been an ordinary poor student before, but the apocalypse has made dependable men extremely valuable. Waiting too long will only give another woman the chance to claim him first. Bingyan says she makes women sound worse than zombies, but Yushin insists she is completely serious. Years in business taught Yushin that competition between women can become far more ruthless than Bingyan expects. She points to Shen Xinyu, whose unusual eagerness around Zhao proves even a reserved woman will act when she sees an opportunity. Yushin still believes Bingyan has the advantage because Zhao would need to be blind not to notice her. Bingyan argues that his consistently terrible attitude toward her proves the exact opposite. Yushin explains that a man who truly dislikes someone simply ignores her, while Zhao reacts to nearly everything Bingyan does. In her supposedly expert opinion, all that hostility looks suspiciously close to clumsy flirting. Bingyan loudly rejects the idea of liking such an arrogant man, while her immediate blush weakens the entire defense. Yushin calls them a naturally quarrelsome couple and warns Bingyan not to waste the first romantic opportunity she has ever noticed. Yushin then calls Li Shuyang darling and asks him to carry the vegetables, immediately putting her new boyfriend privileges to work. Zhao teases Li about becoming a surprise romantic success, while Li struggles to explain that this relationship mostly happened against his will. Their joking ends when a terrified scream tears through the quiet building. Zhao immediately turns toward the sound and realizes it came from somewhere beyond the dining hall. Everyone abandons dinner and races through the corridor to find whoever cried out. They discover Shen Xinyu crawling across the floor with injuries covering her body. She can barely lift her head, and the fear in her eyes shows whatever attacked her is still nearby. Bingyan calls out to her and tries to determine whether she can still respond. A snarling, infected dog emerges from the darkness, explaining both Shen Xinyu's injuries and the scream. Zhao orders Li Shuyang to take Yushin and Bingyan away, while he draws the animal toward himself. Li grabs both women and forces them toward the exit despite their reluctance to leave Zhao behind. With no proper weapon nearby, Zhao hurls the metal drink can straight at the charging animal. The impact injures the dog and sends it reeling, but the infected creature refuses to stay down. Zhao squares up as it regains its balance and prepares to attack again. Its eyes flare red as the pain only makes it more aggressive. Zhao realizes this infected dog moves far faster than ordinary zombies, making direct combat much more dangerous. Its claws and teeth make even a small injury risky, so Zhao needs to find a better weapon before it closes the distance. The dog launches forward with enough speed to erase that distance almost instantly. Zhao vaults across the serving counter rather than trying to stop its charge head-on. The creature clears the same obstacle and stays close behind him, proving the kitchen can only delay it. Elsewhere, Li Zhuyang runs with Yuxian and Bing Yan, keeping both women ahead of the danger. Li tells him to hide inside a nearby room while he goes back to help Zhao. Before they can separate, Shen Xinyu suddenly rises and blocks the corridor ahead of them. Her violent trembling and unnatural presence make it clear that the infection has already taken control. Yuqian and Bingyan freeze while Li studies Shen Xinyu for any remaining sign of awareness. Li cautiously asks whether she is still alive, hoping there is a person left behind the silence. Shen Xinyu only trembles harder and gives them no answer. Bingyan takes one step forward to help, and Shen Xinyu responds by lunging with an infected roar. Li throws himself between them and orders both women back before Shen Xinyu can reach them. He reaches for his weapon and realizes the broadsword is still back inside the dining hall. With no time to retrieve it, Li braces himself bare-handed as the infected woman charges. He hates the thought of striking a woman, but survival leaves no room for hesitation now. Li drives a powerful kick into Shen Xinyu and knocks her away before she can grab either woman. Green infected blood splashes across her face, yet her glowing eyes show the kick did not finish the fight. Back inside the kitchen, Zhao uses the empty workstations to keep the infected dog chasing him in circles. The animal stays close behind him, proving its speed is far beyond anything the ordinary zombies have shown. Rather than competing with it directly, Zhao waits beside the counter and prepares to redirect its momentum. He dodges at the final moment, leaving the dog confused after its attack hits nothing. The creature quickly locates Zhao again and charges with even more aggression. Zhao leads it straight into the kitchen equipment, letting the hard collision stop its attack for him. The dog crashes onto the floor, but Zhao knows one impact will not keep an infected animal down. He hides behind the counter and openly taunts it, deliberately drawing its attention toward his next setup. The provocation works as the furious creature launches itself over the workstation. Zhao steps into position while the dog commits completely to its leap. Using the opening beneath its body, Zhao vaults over the attack and brings his improvised kitchen tool down with full force. He lands with complete confidence because the animal has already fallen into the exact trap he planned. The dog struggles against the final strike, but its speed means nothing once Zhao controls the distance. Zhao finishes the infected animal and dismisses it as far less intelligent than its movement suggested. The system confirms the mutated zombie dog is dead and awards Zhao only 2 experience points. Zhao complains that the fight damaged his clothes and demands at least 10 points, but the system refuses to negotiate. The tiny reward leaves him wondering why an opponent that dangerous is apparently worth pocket change. Expecting something more valuable, Zhao searches the body for a crystal nucleus. He assumes its superior speed means it should carry a higher level nucleus than the mutant zombie he defeated before. The system explains that animals are naturally faster than humans, so this ordinary infected dog never possessed a crystal nucleus at all. Li Xuyang arrives while Zhao was arguing aloud, forcing him to pretend he was only talking to himself. Once Li sees the body, he can hardly believe Zhao defeated such a dangerous creature alone. Li immediately asks to learn his methods, and Zhao casually promises to show him another time. Zhao asks about Yuxin and Bingyan, so Li explains that Shen Xinyu's infected blood splashed onto them during the fight. Li sent both women to clean themselves thoroughly, while Zhao warns that this dog may not have been the only threat nearby. Although Li handled Shen Xinyu well, Zhao knows ordinary strength will not be enough once stronger mutated creatures begin appearing. Li interrupts the serious thought with a much more immediate crisis, because Shen Xinyu was supposed to prepare dinner. Zhao stares at him, amazed that food somehow became the priority again this quickly. With the building temporarily quiet, the group returns to the dining hall and tries to recover from the attack. Zhao combines the remaining vegetables, mushrooms, meat, and noodles into one large pot. Yuqin praises the meal and seems genuinely surprised that Zhao knows how to cook. He admits this is barely cooking because he only boiled everything together with instant noodle seasoning like he did in the dormitory. Yuxin still calls it impressive and claims any woman would be lucky to marry a man who can prepare dinner this easily. She tells Li Shuyang to learn from Zhao, but Li argues that cooking should not automatically become the men's responsibility. Yuxin refuses to damage the carefully maintained hands she spent so much money protecting and assigns the work to him anyway. Zhao cuts through the argument by declaring that titles, wealth, and former social rank mean nothing inside this group. Anyone who expects free service while ordering everyone else around can leave, because survival requires every capable person to contribute. Yushin nervously claims she was only joking once Zhao's warning becomes much more serious than she expected. Bingyan suddenly slams down her drink and challenges Zhao, refusing to accept that everyone must follow his rules. Yuxin realizes Bingyan has drunk too much and tries to calm her, but Bingyan insists she is completely sober. She accuses Zhao of constantly speaking to them with contempt and says rescuing them does not give him permission to humiliate them. Zhao answers that lacking domestic skills does not make anyone useless, but demanding special treatment while contributing nothing does. Bingyan fires back that becoming a company president required years of effort nobody ever saw beneath the polished image. She worked through entire nights and endured difficult clients because every contract could decide whether her company survived. To Bingyan, Zhao's judgment erases all the sacrifice and work that built her career before the outbreak. Her hands begin trembling as anger gives way to the grief she has been holding back since everything collapsed. Bingyan reveals that one night destroyed the company she devoted her life to and took every employee who had struggled beside her. Zhao finally understands that her pride is covering an enormous loss, leaving him unable to answer her pain with another harsh remark. Yuqin helps the unsteady Bingyan toward her room, while Bingyan continues insisting that she is nowhere near drunk. Watching them leave, Li Suyang quietly asks whether Zhao was unnecessarily harsh with her. Zhao brushes the concern aside, though Bingyan's emotional confession has clearly left him with more to consider. Yuxin eventually gets Bingyan inside one of the building's furnished bedrooms. Once placed on the bed, Bingyan clings to Yuxin and begs her not to leave because everyone else is already gone. Her sadness suddenly becomes drunken confidence as she declares they can protect themselves and survive without relying on any man. Yuxin patiently agrees to stay beside her tonight and promises to protect her when they continue traveling tomorrow. Bingyan immediately starts ranting about Zhao being the most arrogant, rude, and unbearable man she has ever met. The intensity of that rant makes Yuxin realize Zhao is occupying far more of Bingyan's thoughts than she wants to admit. When Yuxin teases her about it, Bingyan responds with one irritated pinch and ends the relationship analysis immediately. After sleeping off the worst of the alcohol, Bingyan slowly awakens beneath the bedroom lamp. Her confused mind struggles to explain how she went from eating dinner to waking inside a stranger's room. Fragments of the meal return, including her argument with Zhao and the embarrassing scene she created before everyone. Bingyan hides her face in shame and wonders why Yuxin allowed her to keep talking for that long. Still dizzy, she slips out of her shoes and tries to regain enough balance to stand properly. Outside, Li Suyang notices Zhao is also struggling, but Zhao tells him to stop worrying and get some rest. The alcohol finally catches up with Zhao as he stumbles down the hallway with badly delayed coordination. His thoughts drift back to drinking beer and eating hot pot with Wu Bin inside their dorm before the outbreak. That memory makes Zhao wonder whether Wu Bin and Xinyu are safe somewhere with enough food to survive. Jinyu's face fills his mind, bringing back feelings he spent years keeping hidden, half awake and guided more by memory than judgment. Zhao wanders farther along the quiet corridor. He notices light behind a partially closed door and peers through the opening without thinking clearly. Inside, Xinyu stands near the window with her back turned and no idea that someone has opened the door. She has been changing clothes after washing away the infected blood from earlier. The sight instantly cuts through Zhao's drunken haze and leaves him frozen in the doorway. Xinyu continues dressing until the faint movement behind her makes the room feel less private. Zhao accidentally calls her name aloud, causing Xinyu to cover herself and demand to know who entered. She turns just enough to recognize Zhao Tianlei's voice and presence behind her. The door creaks wider as Zhao steps inside, confirming that she did not imagine him. Xinyu orders him out because she is still changing, but the warning reaches someone barely capable of walking straight. Instead of leaving, Zhao suddenly embraces her as years of suppressed emotion and fresh fear overwhelm his judgment. Xinyu goes completely still, unsure whether to push him away or understand what has made him act like this. Zhao admits he has been terrified that something might happen to her and begs her not to disappear from his life. With his defenses finally gone, he confesses that he has liked her for a long time. Xinyu can hardly believe what she heard and asks him to repeat himself. She pushes him back and argues that his constant avoidance always made it seem like he hated her. Zhao insists she misunderstood because he could never bring himself to hate her. Xinyu asks why he always looked away and refused to meet her eyes whenever they spoke. Zhao finally gives her the honest answer and admits that he was afraid. To him, Xinyu was a distant star admired by everyone, while he was a penniless student who could barely afford tuition. The apocalypse changed that helpless version of him, and Zhao promises to protect her with his strength and everything he has left. Xinyu remembers Yuxin explaining that true hatred looks like indifference, not the constant reactions Zhao always showed her. For the first time, she considers that his awkward behavior may have come from affection rather than dislike. The realization leaves Jinyu blushing as the years of confusing interactions suddenly begin making sense. Zhao asks her to stay beside him and give him the chance to prove that his promise is real. Still carried by emotion, he gently holds her face and moves closer before she can decide how to respond. Jinyu closes her eyes as the distance between them nearly disappears. Her grip loosens while every thought in her head briefly stops working. The clothing slits from Shinyu's hand and lands on the floor as the tense moment hangs unresolved. A sudden scream tears through the room and destroys what little peace remained after the previous night. Zhao jolts awake in bed and immediately realizes the scene around him looks far worse than anything he can remember. Li Shuyang and Yu Xin stand in the doorway pointing at him, equally shocked by what they believe they discovered. Beside Zhao, Xinyu hides beneath the blanket and cannot bring herself to face the others. The clothing scattered across the floor makes every possible explanation sound increasingly useless. Still dizzy and completely confused, Zhao asks everyone what happened while trying to reconstruct the missing hours. Yu Qing calls him shameless and explains that she entered after changing clothes, only to find him beside Jinyu. Li pulls Zhao aside and asks whether his supposedly respectable big brother really caused this entire situation. Zhao only remembers becoming dizzy after drinking and wandering through the building in search of somewhere to sleep. Fragments of embracing Jinyu, confessing his feelings, and moving closer return without explaining how the night actually ended. The incomplete memories leave Zhao covering his face because even he cannot produce a convincing defense. Yuxin mistakes his hesitation for regret and demands to know whether he plans to avoid responsibility now that he is sober. Xinyu finally stops her and insists the situation is not as simple as everyone assumes. She says they are both adults responsible for their own choices and promises she will not blame Zhao for anything. Li still believes Zhao should take responsibility as a man instead of quietly accepting Xinyu's attempt to protect him. Overwhelmed and embarrassed, Zhao turns on Li and blames him for insisting that they drink in the first place. Xinyu watches his reaction closely, heard that his first instinct is to treat the night like an accident. Her direct response catches Li and Yusin off guard because this is clearly about more than the awkward scene they interrupted. Zhao apologizes and promises that whatever happened was his fault, so he will accept full responsibility for Xinyu. That answer hurts her more because she wanted his confession to be sincere, not an obligation created by drunken guilt. Xinyu slaps Zhao and storms past him, furious that he could misunderstand her feelings so completely. Zhao accepts the blow without arguing while Li and Yusin realize their intervention only made everything worse. A burst of distant gunfire suddenly interrupts the argument and turns everyone's attention toward the construction grounds outside. Zhao tells Li to follow him so they can determine who is shooting and whether the survivors need help. Before leaving, Zhao looks back at Xinyu, but neither of them finds the right words to repair the moment. Xinyu remains silent beside Yusin as Zhao and Li race toward the sound. Daylight reveals the unfinished development surrounding them, with open foundations and construction equipment offering little protection. A large group of zombies charges through the site after several fleeing survivors. The survivors scatter across the exposed ground while gunshots briefly slow the infected closing behind them. Wushuan supports his injured companion with one arm and uses a handgun to cover their retreat with the other. Another survivor complains that Zhou will get them all killed, but the wounded man tells Wushuan to abandon him and escape. Wushuan refuses to leave his companion and promises they will both survive as long as they keep moving. He turns toward the approaching zombies and fires directly into the front of the group. Wushuan's steady aim allows him to land accurate shots despite moving and carrying Zhou's weight. Another infected drops before reaching them, giving the survivors a few more seconds to retreat. The others celebrate Wushuan's marksmanship and urge him to keep clearing their path. Their confidence disappears when his weapon clicks empty and he realizes every bullet has already been spent. The nearest zombies immediately overwhelm Wushuan and knock him away from Zhou. Pinned beneath them, he uses both arms to keep their hands and jaws away from his face. The survivor hiding nearby freezes instead of helping, convinced that stepping forward will only get him killed too. His panic leaves Wushuan surrounded with no ammunition and nobody close enough to pull the attackers away. Wushuan cries out as another infected rushes toward him from an angle he cannot defend. A fast strike suddenly cuts across the construction site before the creature can reach him. The attacking zombie collapses beside Wushuan, revealing that help has finally reached the trapped survivors. Li Shuyang charges in with his broadsword and puts down another infected before it can join the attack. He tells Zhao to handle the remaining threats while he protects Wushuan and the wounded survivors. Zhao answers by crushing the nearest zombie with his axe and confidently takes control of the fight. Zhao and Li Shuyang hold the advancing zombies back while the exhausted survivors remain trapped behind them. The wealthy survivor watches from cover and cannot understand why these two men seem completely unafraid. Wu Xuan is equally stunned because Zhao's calm fighting style looks nothing like ordinary desperation. Zhao orders Wu Xuan to take everyone into the nearby canteen while he and Li clear the remaining infected. Wu Xuan supports the badly injured Zhou as the wealthy survivor and his pink-haired companion hurry toward shelter. Once the others are moving, Zhao and Li step forward and prevent the zombies from following them. Each infected Zhao defeats adds another experience point and pushes him closer to his next promotion. The system finally announces that he has collected enough experience to advance again. Energy surges through Zhao as the ring begins strengthening his body in the middle of the fight. His promotion to private first class completes and raises his physical abilities beyond their previous limits. Another wave approaches before Zhao has any time to test what the upgrade changed. Li warns him about the growing numbers, but Zhao sees the crowd as perfect practice for his improved body. He tells Li to move aside and takes the next group for himself. Zhao's first attack lands before the nearest infected can properly react. The follow-up cuts through the surrounding group so quickly that several attackers are stopped almost together. His speed, strength, and awareness have all increased enough for him to track every threat moving around him. Zhao immediately enjoys the upgrade because his body now responds exactly as quickly as his mind. Li watches the performance and concludes that his big brother has become a one-man zombie cleanup crew. Inside the canteen, the fleeing survivors pound on the locked entrance as the infected close behind them. Bingyan and Yusin open the doors just in time and quickly lock them again once everyone is safely inside. The wealthy survivor and his companion collapse together while celebrating that they somehow escaped alive. Wu Xuan lowers Zhou carefully because carrying him any farther could worsen his condition. When Zhou stops responding, Wu Xuan calls his name and fears his final remaining partner may also be dying. The women examine Zhou while Wu Xuan waits helplessly for any sign that he can still recover. Yuxin steadies Bingyan as both women approach the injured man with understandable caution. A quick check confirms Zhou is weak and unconscious but still alive. Wu Xuan assures them that thugs caused Zhou's injuries, so there is no bite and no risk of infection. The wealthy survivor dismisses Zhou and orders everyone to barricade the doors before more zombies arrive. Bingyan refuses because Zhao and Li are still outside and need a way back into the building. The man begins blocking the entrance anyway and declares that two people surrounded by that many infected must already be dead. He even orders the women to protect him, assuming Zhao would blame them if their newest burden got hurt. Zhao arrives in time to knock the barricade and its selfish builder straight onto the floor. The survivors stare in shock as the two men they abandon walk inside without any visible injuries. Zhao calmly asks who decided he and Li were supposed to be dead. The wealthy survivor can barely process that both men returned after facing the entire group outside. Yuxin immediately embraces Li and admits how worried she was while he remained outside. She tells her embarrassed boyfriend there is no reason to act shy after everything they have survived together. Li admits he defeated only a few zombies and gives most of the credit to Zhao for clearing more than 20. Bingyan asks Yuxin to accompany her upstairs because she still has no desire to speak with Zhao. Yuxin agrees while Zhao remains alone across the room with no idea how to repair their argument. She promises Li that she will return after spending some time calming Bingyan down. Yuxin follows her friend and gently asks her not to remain angry forever. The two women leave together while Zhao watches Bingyan walk away without looking back. The wealthy survivor quietly studies the group and notices the tension distracting nearly everyone. His pink-haired companion grabs him and reminds him that the doors and windows still need to be secured. He quickly agrees once her patient starts looking more dangerous than the threat outside. The man calls the others over and demands help building the barricades immediately. Li tells them to relax because every zombie outside has already been eliminated. The wealthy survivor accuses him of bragging since he cannot believe two men defeated nearly 50 infected alone. Zhao simply calls it easy and tells the doubter to step outside and count the bodies himself. Upstairs, Bingyan quietly packs her belongings while everyone else remains occupied downstairs. Yuxin tries stopping her because leaving alone in this world would be far more dangerous than staying angry with Zhao. Bingyan insists Zhao never liked her and only approached her because he mistook her for Shen Xinyu. The humiliation has left her so furious that she no longer trusts herself to remain around him calmly. Rather than create more conflict, Bingyan believes disappearing from the group would be better for everyone. She assures Yusin that other survivors must exist somewhere and claims she can protect herself until she finds them. Yuxin ignores the escape plan and asks the question Bingyan has been carefully avoiding about whether she likes Jiachao. Bingyan denies it far too quickly, allowing Yusin to identify jealousy as the real reason behind all this anger. Yuqin reminds her that Zhao and Shen Xinyu never established a relationship, and nobody even knows where Shen Xinyu is now. Instead of surrendering immediately, she encourages Bingyan to confess honestly and see how Zhao responds. Bingyan finally pauses because leaving suddenly feels less appealing than the chance she might still have. Yuxin argues that a woman capable of winning enormous business contracts should not become helpless over one stubborn man. Bingyan accepts that Shen Xinyu met Zhao first, but neither woman has secured any commitment from him. She decides Zhao is basically an open contract now and both women can compete fairly using their own strengths. Yuxin celebrates the return of Bingyan's business instincts, although applying corporate strategy to romance is certainly one approach. A loud crash from downstairs interrupts their planning and sends both women toward the railing. Below them, Wu Xuan and Li Shuyang are already exchanging strikes in the middle of the canteen. Bingyan and Yuxin struggle to understand why the two men started fighting while the building is finally safe. Wu Xuan throws a fast punch, testing whether Li can react against someone with actual combat training. Li answers with a powerful kick and proves that surviving zombies has sharpened more than his confidence. Wu Xuan catches the attack and pulls Li into a tight hold before he can regain his balance. Yuxin warns Li as Wu Xian begins controlling the exchange through technique rather than raw strength. Wu Xuan reveals his training combines foreign jujitsu with Western combat methods, though he admits Li has learned impressively fast. Li refuses to lose to a resume and uses Wu Xian's position against him with a sudden throw. Wu Xuan hits the floor hard enough to end the friendly match without either man needing another round. Zhao smiles at Li's improvement while Yuxin proudly celebrates her boyfriend's unexpected victory. With the match settled, Zhao turns his attention toward the wealthy survivor who previously tried abandoning everyone outside. The man immediately panics because Zhao's calm approach feels much more threatening than open anger. He drops to his knees and begs forgiveness, claiming fear made him say and do things he never truly intended. Zhao tells him plainly that neither his excuses nor his life matter enough to justify this performance. What Zhao actually wants is Wu Xuan, whose skill and loyalty would make him valuable to the group. He offers to forget the wealthy man's behavior as long as Wu Xuan is released from his employment. The survivor agrees instantly and searches through his clothes for proof that the arrangement can be ended properly. He produces the employment contract that originally placed Wu Xuan under his company's command. Tearing the contract apart, he declares that Wu Xuan is no longer his bodyguard and owes him no further protection. Zhao approves and offers Wu Xuan a place where every member is treated as a teammate rather than a servant. Wu Xuan remains cautious because changing employers is simple, while trusting complete strangers during an apocalypse is not. Zhao refuses to force him but says he has something that could make Wu Xuan's decision considerably easier. He quietly produces a full box of ammunition from the system's exchange storage. Zhao hands the box toward Wu Xian without demanding any immediate promise in return. Wu Xuan recognizes the ammunition and realizes Zhao has just solved the biggest weakness of his empty handgun. Li asks where Zhao found it since they have traveled together long enough to notice supplies appearing from nowhere. Zhao claims he recovered the ammunition from robbers during an earlier encounter and saved it in case it became useful. Internally, he complains that the exchange system offers ammunition but still refuses to provide the weapon that normally uses it. He gives the entire box to Wu Xuan, hoping it will keep the skilled marksman alive during their next encounter. Wu Xuan understands the trust behind the gesture and officially agrees to join Zhao's group.